Hey everybody, welcome to We've Got Ward, a doof media shop where we sell expert dissection and discussion of Ward, Wablo's Return to the World of Parahumans. My name is Matt Freeman, and this is my coworker, Scott Daly.
Matt, the doors are chained shut. The whole place is filling with smoke.
Oh my God, is that guy dead? Scott, what are we gonna do? There's fallen everywhere. Oh no, Scott, he's got me. Scott, he's got a gun to my head. He's saying to start the show.
I'm so sorry. This is the weekly podcast where Matt and I eagerly dive into Wablo's world of expensive imp jokes, dream vision potpourri, and alien-based death powers as we analyze and interpret this ongoing web serial. This week on the show, we are continuing to explore what comes from within with chapters 16.7 and 16.8. Well, Matt, they're doing it. They're actually going to do this terrible dream room idea. But not before some cool conversations about past heroes and villains, and some cool trigger visions of past and present heroes and villains. Matt, what did you think of these two chapters?
Well, these are great. Once again, this is one of those weeks where I'm really happy that we were able to pair up these particular couple of chapters, because it really feels like we're laying some specific groundwork in terms of certain conversations and certain character beats in 16.7. And then those pay off in a big way in 16.8. And of course, on top of that, 16.8 is, one of those chapters where when you look back over the entirety of Ward, I think you're going to remember that as one of the highlights.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just like emotionally devastating, just like a lot. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of detail. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
I mean, it reminds me of a lot of the interlude chapters in terms of variety and interesting things being done. Because we are sort of swapping around perspectives, but sort of not at the same time. Very unusual chapter, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, and like I hinted at the very first part of my intro, I really like how we're doing this very specific thing where in this first chapter we have Aiden talking to Victoria about each and every one of these old capes and what they were like before and wanting to know that. So we're getting this kind of one perspective on what these people were like. And then in this next chapter, we're getting a perspective on what people went through with a different group of people. And I just like that comparison between those two. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, we're looking to the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, in both ways we are. Yeah.
All right, Scott, some quick announcements before we get into the show. First of all, once again, reminding everyone the fan art contest on the topic of reflections is due September 30th at midnight Pacific Standard Time.
20 days.
Yep, 20 days left, folks. Please check out the official rules in the show notes below.
Mm-hmm. And once again, we are doing a mailbag episode, not next week, but the week after, because I will be out of town at a film festival for that week, and so we won't be able to do normal episodes, so we thought we'd do a mailbag. We are asking you guys to send in your questions to us via email this time around, so send them to gotwormpod@gmail.com, and you can send them anytime you want. And basically anything's fair game here. Any of the books we've covered, if you want to ask just like random other questions. It's been a while since we've done that on this show either, so it doesn't have to be about Worm and Ward if you just want to ask us some random stuff. Just wanted to put out some content on a week that we couldn't do the show. So message us at gotwormpod@gmail.com and just put the word mailbag in the subject and we'll know what it's for.
Yeah. All right. Let's get on into it. 16.7.
All right.
So the Joint Bad Ideas Brigade convoys their way back to Breakthrough HQ. Tattletale gives Darlene a chewing out in one car, while Victoria is crammed in with Natalie, Kinsey, Candy, and Aiden.
And I just love this setup as just like this general like mom Victoria is driving in this car and all the kids are like in the back seat like chattering amongst themselves, and it kind of escalates and moves and she has to get involved, and it's just like a funny kind of standard type of like normal interaction that of course is tinged with cape weirdness.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, we have moments of Natalie being like, let's talk about something cheerful.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. A very interesting and kind of comedic tone that they're going for here. There's some heavy stuff there too, but there's definitely a lot of comedy.
Yeah, I think that's like the juxtaposition there is really funny because like you could imagine a time where Victoria or Natalie just goes, okay, let's sing a happy driving song or something. But that's mixed in with the fact that these are kids, but they're kids that have gone through and seen things that nobody should ever have to experience in their entire life. So it's like a mixture of that. Hey, they're kids, but also Jesus.
Yeah. So the kids are having a conversation that revolves around the concept of insider versus outsider. Chicken accuses the local kids who swim in the swimming hole near the Heartbroken compound as being outsiders. And Candy points out that he's more of an outsider than they are because he's not really in the family, which makes his head explode figuratively. So, other than this being a very realistic kind of conversation for preteens to have, it is the kind of thing that preteens are usually kind of fixated on.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can dig into it more.
So like my
first thought, of course we can. My first thought is like, okay, the dream room, everybody's about to make an unwelcome splash in the deep end of the shard pool. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, I think just like this general concept of insider outsider status being a matter of perspective is something that maps up to a lot of what we've talked about over the course of this book, and we're kind of seeing that introduced to us again here. How perspective shifts, how just a shift in perspective like kind of mutates how you view a certain interaction. Aiden sees these people as the outsiders because from his perspective they are, but from their perspective he is the outsider, and I think that's really interesting. Especially since we're gonna have a bunch of characters jump into the shard world in the next chapter, in which Grasping Self is there waiting to fuck them up. And I think that you could stretch an argument there to say, hey, from their perspective, this shard thing is the outsider that has invaded their minds, but from the shard's perspective, these people are invading him now, right? They're like, what are they doing here? They're invading me. And like, it's just this outsider insider dynamic thing is very interesting in that reflection, I think.
Yeah, it almost, I mean, the way you phrase it just there almost made me suspect that there's something more complicated going on. Like we're going to be surprised by something that we find in the shard world,
Yeah, I would be not disappointed, but I would be surprised if things aren't more complicated. Like the whole this idea of the shards and what's going on with the shards now, and the fact that the shards have suffered their own kind of version of trauma, even though they are not human and don't process things like we do, has been this kind of ongoing beat behind the scenes of the story. And I would be very surprised if that is not addressed in some way in these chapters when they're directly contacting this thing in a way that they never have before.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Mm-hmm. Interesting note, though, in the whole Chicken Little's evolving power game thing that we've been tracking throughout this, he like makes a head explode noise when he's like talking about like how what Candy just said to him like blew up his brain, and it makes his birds freak out. And that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I read that and then I read this in the script earlier, and only now am I making the connection that like, oh yeah, that's what Taylor always used to do. She used to offload her emotional displays and her emotional kind of embodiment, if you will, into her swarm. And here we have Aiden like unconsciously, inadvertently using his birds as a way of expressing his emotions.
Exactly.
Just the way she did. That's pretty awesome.
It's great.
Yeah. So yeah, Chicken asks of Victoria a bunch of questions about Protectorate heroes. He asks about Armsmaster, Dauntless, Miss Militia. And then he asks about Rachel. And Victoria admits, lies, and says that she likes Rachel now. But definitely doesn't approve of her villainy. It's a very mom moment.
I think you're being unfair to Victoria a little bit there, Matt. I
mean,
I don't think she's lying.
Well, see, I'm not convinced that Victoria likes Rachel. I think that she's come to a place where they can work together,
Sure.
I mean, am I wrong?
No, I think Victoria has a very complicated relationship with her, as she does with anyone who used to be a not great person back in the day and has taken steps. And so that's I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But before we dive into this and really talk about what they talk through each individual person, eventually leading up to Taylor herself, I want to kind of talk with you about like maybe taking a step back and looking at what Chicken Little is doing here overall. Because so they're in the car, they're on the way to do this dream room idea that they have no idea if it's going to work. They have no idea what it's going to do. They really have very little plan here. And in this moment, Chicken Little is pulling Victoria aside almost and being like, hey, talk to me. You know all these old capes, right? Tell me what they were like. Talk to me about what they're like. What was Dauntless like? What was Miss Militia like? What was Armsmaster like? And he says when he's getting to talk about Rachel and the rest of people he knows personally now are, if I don't ask in a moment like right now, I don't think anyone's ever going to tell me. And I mean, there's a certain finality to that, right? Like there's certain, stake setting. Like he's asking questions because he doesn't think he's ever going to get an opportunity to ask these questions again. But thematically, I mean, what do you think we're doing here? I think this is really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely contextualizing everything by referring back to the past and where everyone came from, reminding us, like Dauntless is being brought up here too, right? Like that's definitely important. We've got the Dauntless Titan thing. You've got Armsmaster, who underwent a big character change and got a whole different name. And yeah, I mean, what do you think?
I mean, I just think like we're in this moment where we're looking at what the world was like before. Like, what was the world like before this event happens? Who are these people before all this bad stuff happened? And the curiosity of a person who really doesn't remember what the world was like before crazy shit went down, I think comes through at a moment where more crazy shit is about to go down, right? Like there's this curiosity, like the world has ended. We are living past the apocalypse. What was it like? Tell me about it. Tell me about the world. Tell me about the people of the world. What were they like? I want to know. I want to hear about these things. I think there's an innate curiosity there, especially as this version of the world might be ending as well. You might be moving to a new age, a new type of existence.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, I was kind of fixated on the idea that he's being so like wide-eyed and just kind of naive almost in the way he's asking these questions. Just he's very open about it, right? And that's normal because he's a kid. It reminds me of when I was probably like 9 or so, and I saw something on like the news about how these meteors were going to hit Jupiter, which actually did happen, but then it was going to cause like a shockwave that was going to destroy everything in the solar system, and we were all going to die. Okay. And I was like kind of upset, but kind of excited too at the idea of this. And it's just kind of the headspace that Aiden is in is very reminds me of kind of the weird the weird giddiness at disaster that I remember being able to have when I was a kid.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing he's explicitly doing is he starts this conversation talking about Armsmaster and Dauntless and Miss Militia because they were characters he played in a video game, but he never got past the first level because all the bad guys scared him, and now he is on the team. He is approaching the bad guys. He's going to. Not planning on going into the dream world, but we know it's going to happen, right? So he is there on the front lines being part of the team that's going to do something. And so it's a great way of like level setting and you understand why he's thinking this. And of course, I think the conversation around Skitter, which we're going to spend a lot of time on, has, I think, to me, very specific purpose, but we'll get to that in a bit. But I like this. I like this kind of ruminating on the past that we're seeing set up here. And I think you're right that specifically what this is doing is just reminding us about Dauntless. It's reminding us about Armsmaster, who is a character that we know is not really on their side for what they're about to do. And I think so. We're just refreshing the reader's memory of these characters here.
That makes sense. I mean, just to beat on this drum for another couple seconds, zoom out, very high level. Theme of the story is trauma. The theme of the story maybe is recovery, hopefully. But Aiden was pretty little back when the trauma happened. So he's asking somebody who knows, hey, I'm looking around. I'm seeing the consequences of trauma. I'm doing what I can to recover, but I don't actually remember what happened. And I don't remember what things were like before the trauma. I don't remember what things used to be like. I don't know how to go back to normal because I don't remember normal. And so in a very high level sense, I think this is an interesting statement about what it's like if maybe you don't remember what it used to be like.
Yeah. Well, and I think I like that a lot because I think that ties really into what happens in the next chapter, which is that every one of these 15 or so people gets to experience everyone else's trauma as if they're living it.
Right.
And I think that's good. I think there's a lot going on there that we'll get to, but I think that ties in rather nicely with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Where were we? Oh, I
Somewhere
don't even know.
here.
I don't even know. I lost my spot in the
around
notes. So back to Rachel specifically, though. I think, you said, I think mostly she means it. I think you're right. I don't think she likes her, but I think there is a mutual respect going on there. Rachel has been helpful. I do like this one thing she says about Rachel here. Back then, angrier, I guess, violent, vicious. I saw her hurt people. And I like this because if you took this out of context and I didn't tell you they were talking about Rachel here, you could say that that's a description of Glory Girl back in the day, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Angrier, violent, vicious. I saw her hurt people. These are all things that Glory Girl did.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect somewhat that Wildbow did that intentionally because she wasn't. If she were more specific, if she said, "I saw her order her dogs to crunch someone's leg into a pulp," then that wouldn't apply to Glory Girl. But this sentence, as it is, or these four sentences, these four short sentences apply to Glory Girl, just as well.
Yeah,
like perfectly well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think maybe that's one of the, I think one of the things that the Victoria has a problem with is this guilt and shame and regret about the type of hero she was in that time. And I think connecting that with a person that she has a very uncomfortable relationship with because she sees them as this vicious, overly violent person that was there and overly violent to them the day that all her worst shit went down. Right. I think she has a connection to Rachel in that way.
That's true. And I think maybe Rachel is one of the people who she's worked with her enough that she kind of credits her with having turned a new leaf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not so much Tattletale, though.
Not so much Tattletale. Sometimes I try to talk to her or convince her of stuff. Sorry, this is Aiden talking, actually. Sometimes I try to talk to her and convince her of stuff. And I have these points I'm pretty sure are good ones, but she won't budge at all. You'd think someone with her power would be better at seeing other people's points of view. How perceptive, young chicken.
Yeah, I mean, he's right on the money there, right? And of course, I love Victoria's comment, which is no comment. I don't want to make enemies, which is basically code for, yup.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, the other half of this thing that we didn't pull out here is Victoria saying that Tattletale is scarily similar to what they were just talking about with Rachel. And she's a person who hasn't changed that much in all the time she's known her. Maybe her edges are a little bit softened, but she hasn't really changed it that much. How do we feel about that? Because I think in a few minutes, Aiden is basically going to directly contradict that and say, no, actually, I think she's changed quite a bit. But do we think Victoria is being fair to Lisa here? Has she changed? Matt?
Oh man, I don't know. I'm okay. Maybe you disagree. I'm hard pressed to think of any example of Tattletale changing. The only real way that I can think of is she's less likely to get herself in trouble by being just grossly spontaneous and I'm groping for a word that I can't find. Just acting stupidly in the moment. I think she's a little bit more patient, a little bit older and wiser. Mm-hmm. But she still ended up cut into pieces and made into a cradle egg. It's not like she's any better at avoiding terrible situations.
Sure.
She doesn't seem to be a whole lot better as a leader. She did lose one of the Heartbroken.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think she's changed. I think she's changed in a lot of ways. I think the problem with Lisa is that the ways in which her trauma manifests itself are very overt. It's very obvious. Just the nature of her power and the nature of how her power is used and how her power aligns with her personality comes off in a very specific kind of way. So she hasn't recovered from her trauma yet, right? We see very clearly here when we make a specific connection between her brother and Taylor in a couple minutes that that she is still suffering from primarily the trauma that happened to her. So, and I think that manifests itself in ways that make it seem like, hey, she hasn't changed that much. But I do think there's a lot of stuff going on underneath her that I would feel uncomfortable being like, nah, she actually hasn't changed that much. I think there's a lot she does. There's a lot she's working on. And I think, as Chicken Little says, there's a lot she's carrying. She's carrying a lot of stuff now, and she's trying in different kinds of ways. It's just in the day-to-day, the way she comes off to people, especially to Victoria, is of a person who is just as snarky, just as rude, just as dismissive of other people's feelings that she always saw her as.
Yeah, a lot of what you just said also obviously reminded me of Victoria a ton, because she's someone who's also never recovered from her original trauma. Her original trauma was her parents being shit-ass parents, which they have always been and remain at now, currently. And she has basically, instead of solving that problem, she's just kind of like buried it under like 7 more sedimentary layers of trauma.
Yeah.
Such that it only crops up every once in a while, but I think that it fingers through and influences everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So you could say like a lot of Victoria's sharper edges are rounded off. Like, I mean, she's not throwing dumpsters at people or vice versa. But
true.
But that's not because she had a moral awakening. That's because she had something horrible happen to her that forced her to reevaluate. Much like Tattletale had some horrible things happen to her that have kind of forced her to be like, yeah, maybe I should tone it down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we have the privilege of being inside Victoria's head. So we can, I say with confidence that yes, Victoria has absolutely changed since the start of this book, unquestionably. But we're in her head constantly. So if this entire book was from Tattletale's point of view, I think we would be much more comfortable in saying, yeah, she's changed.
Yeah. Right. I like my sedimentary layers description, because it's like both of them are people who still have the bad stuff going on under the surface.
Oh yeah.
If they appear better, it's because they've developed corrective antidotes rather than actually solve the original problem or dealt with it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, moving on through this conversation, more comic relief. Victoria has to pay $5 for making an imp joke,
which is wonderful. I love it.
Yep.
It's also a way to avoid actually answering the question about how imp has changed.
That's true.
Because they just kind of move on from that.
Well, I don't think Victoria ever knew imp originally.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think she did. I don't think not well enough to make a comment about how different she is.
Yeah. Then they talk about Skitter for a little bit.
Oh boy.
A lot of Skitter talk in these chapters, eh, Scott?
Yeah, the characters are all finally addressing the giant scarab in the room, Matt. And so there's tons of reasons why we could be, really starting to zoom in on Skitter a bit here in this part of the book. I mean, the most obvious one is that Taylor's coming back, right? That's right.
Oh yeah.
No, that's impossible because she's dead. That can't happen.
Oh, Scott, you and your jokes.
No, in all seriousness, no, I do take the book on its word, where the book has basically said directly to us that her story's over and she's not coming back. I don't actually think that's going to happen. What I do think is, I think if you look at what our characters are doing right now, right? What are they doing right now? They're about to fuck with some shit that they don't fully understand in the name of preventing some worse shit from happening, right? They're going to go do some shard stuff without fully realizing what they're doing and what the consequences of what they're doing could be. In the name of the greater good, kind of. So I think this does have not a 1-to-1, but a close mirror of kind of the choices Taylor was making as she decided to risk what Khepri eventually became. So I think it's kind of, thematically fitting to mirror these two choices against each other, to bring that decision back up and make it fresh on our minds as we see our characters working towards this thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What's interesting in this case is I'm not entirely sure that these characters appreciate the gravity of what they're doing, even as much as Taylor appreciated the gravity of what she was doing. I mean, I feel like at least she knew she was going to be making a sacrifice, although it was worse than she expected it to be.
Yeah.
These guys are just kind of like Pollyanna-ish, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna head off teacher. We're gonna do it. I don't know. Maybe I'm misreading the situation.
No, I mean, I think one of the things we'll talk about what we see them doing is they've removed the concept of a choice, that a choice has to be made. They look at this as absolutely, we have to do this. We have to do this. And I think Taylor, even at the end, was aware that she was making a choice to do it. she just knew that she was going to make that choice. Maybe that's not fair. It's been a long time since I read that book. So,
well, I like that framing. I mean, I think that this happens with Victoria a lot, where she does things because it's not like she has a sense of volition about it. It's like, oh, well, this is the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And again, yeah, I mean, like it does amaze me as we get through, them executing on their plan. It amazes me how little of planning there has been around this whole thing. Like, they don't know what's going to happen. They don't really understand what they're going to do. It's like, as we get to it, they release the guardian of the dream room, and then are like, oh,
oops, yeah,
shit.
Huh.
I guess we got like 2 hours to figure out how Rain's not going to just die horribly. And oh, cool. It's just like, it's hilarious in that their complete inability in this big thing that they feel like they have to do to plan. I mean, I don't know how much planning you could do, but it seems like the question of, hey, let's talk about how we could bring stuff into the dream with us should have been brought up before we executed the plan. Maybe.
Right. I mean, I feel like the element that makes this all hang together is the fact that really very little time has actually passed.
Sure.
And they have to act before teacher acts, and they expect that to happen in the next X number of hours. So the reason they're not having that conversation is that they literally haven't had time to. And I get that, like, the way we're reading this in web serial format, it's easy to forget about the passage of time.
I mean, because we read an hour over the course of 2 months sometimes. So that is fair. Absolutely. Yeah.
So speaking of, the fact that they're doing this without really thinking about it, and it's kind of reckless. Aiden says, Tattletale says, when you kill yourself or you act so recklessly, you die. So you essentially kill yourself. Then it kind of means people won't care about you. Oof. That's a big oof.
Yeah, that's a big oof in a lot of ways. I think before we go on, I just want to say generally, today, the day we're recording this, is World Suicide Prevention Day in our planet. And so obviously we're talking about suicide directly here, or indirectly here, and then directly in the next chapter. So I think I just wanted to say, guys, if anyone out there is struggling, get help, call someone. The suicide hotline's there. I don't think, Matt, we're going to go into like suicide conceptually here. And like, I don't really want to explore like is Tattletale right? Because I'm not an expert in that. I don't want to speak on that. I think it's very dangerous to speak about suicide in a way that if you don't know about it, which is not something I do. So
yeah, I think what Tattletale is saying here is expressing her feelings, which is really born of hurt, right?
Right. Yeah. That's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how this depicts Tattletale, her opinions. I don't want to talk about it as like suicide conceptually, right? That's not something I want to get into. But what we're saying here is it just that it happens to be, World Suicide Prevention Day. Please, anyone, if you're feeling anything, talk to someone, please. We're gonna put the hotline in our show notes, just so that's all. I just wanted. Sorry, we can go on now.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's a good idea, and I hope people get the help they need. But yeah. So I mean, this first of all, just the idea of Tattletale slotting in what Taylor did as suicide is so important, right? I think we've talked, broadly about the concept of Taylor was Lisa's new person, her new version of her brother. This was like her second chance, her chance to do things better. That's why she got in league with her in the first place. That's why she followed her. That's why she was with her throughout the stuff as she was trying. And we've talked about how Taylor's death is kind of a reflection of, at least in her mind, of failure in that regard. But I think this is the text and Lisa saying it as explicitly as possible, that by literally saying what Taylor did is basically essentially killing yourself, she is specifically drawing a line to that fundamental trauma and that fundamental failure. And I think that's really important to understand her as a person and what she's going through and why she might be suffering and why it seems that she has changed as little as she has, where
in her mind, it happened again. And let's remember, she just lost another Heartbroken, right? She lost another Heartbroken because someone made a choice for them and they were powerless to stop it. And so that has to feel again like something has happened. And it's so awful and tragic. And it's just very much Lisa putting this stuff on herself.
Yeah. I mean, I think you kind of encapsulated all of it right there. She's, not only is she still carrying the trauma from Rex, she's now basically told herself this narrative that this is her lot in life almost. This is how it is with me. I try to protect people. I try to save them from themselves, and I can't. And it's almost like the people that she picks to be her projects are people who have a self-destructive streak, and thus it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Sure. Yeah, but so I mean,
Aiden can be said to have a self-destructive streak, but
I think Aiden is just literally like, this is Taylor, like in many different ways. This is Taylor, and I'm gonna latch onto him. And this is, God, if something happens to Aiden, I can't. Holy shit.
Yeah.
But I do think this is interesting though, because we see next chapter, we see her trigger event, and we see how she reacts to her brother and finding her brother. And it's very inwardly focused, right? It's like, this is my fault. I am stupid is what she says to herself. This really powerful moment where she calls herself stupid, that ties into exactly why she got the power she got. This thing that she's obviously spoken to Aiden many times is very outward focused. It's like, it's when you do this, this is what's going to happen. This is what you do. And I think that's interesting because obviously what she's doing is kind of trying to push Aiden away from this lifestyle, from this choice, right? Like, don't do this. This is bad. This is what happens to you. You hurt and you leave the people you love with anger and hatred and hurt, and everyone else just forgets about you, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's interesting. I don't know. I kind of, maybe I want to see that as a reflection of change, that maybe on some level she's not putting as much of this onto herself, because what Aiden says to this, his response to this is, I think Tattletale probably isn't the same person she's used to be. She's carrying a lot of that with her, that being what happened to Skitter. And I mean, that does just inherently change you. And maybe like we were talking about, I talk about change. And when I talk about change in relation to these characters, like my head goes immediately to change for the better, right? Like, I'm just like, if a character's changing, I'm hoping they're changing for the better, because it's a book about recovery. What if Tattletale is different? What if Tattletale has changed, but she's just gotten worse?
Yeah, I mean, that was honestly my read of the situation based on the fictional statements of an 11-year-old fictional character about another fictional character. Is maybe that is the case, that like, okay, so there's two possibilities. One is that Taylor has Tattletale has kind of sublimated her grief into anger at Taylor.
Yeah.
A way to not have to feel the pain is to be angry at Taylor.
Yeah.
Another possibility is that that's bullshit. She's actually just as hurt and torn up about it as she was about Rex's death, but she's doing the Tattletale thing of bluster and constant, basically just running her mouth to seem invulnerable and making it seem like, oh yeah, you know, don't end up like her. She was a bad egg when you know, inside she's
like, this is all my fault. I failed her. I did this.
Yeah.
It's me. Yeah. I think that's fair.
I kind of lean toward the latter of those two options myself.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the aggression and anger with which Lisa immediately goes to the second Taylor is brought up later, I think falls more in line with that. So I agree. Yeah.
Cool.
You've convinced me.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. So then they kind of have a relaxed, jokey conversation about Aiden's pretend parrot Pegwing. And we cut to the team arriving and making their way up to the hideout. Mm-hmm. Kenzie doesn't have a mask with her, so Vicky loans her the Black Antares mask, which is not at all ominous or meaningful.
No, not at all. I mean, what do you make of it besides that obviously like thematically ominous moment? Like Kenzie is just so indifferent towards the idea of needing any kind of covering. And she doesn't even have her hairpin, right? Like,
Yeah.
so does that mean her scar is showing?
I think so. Yeah, it must, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, it sets up this really awesome visual that we're about to get.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't think that's all it does necessarily. You just have to remember that throughout the following scenes, Victoria is no longer wearing her black mask. Kenzie, who is, I think you could say, in a mood, is wearing the black mask.
Yeah.
And
Well, I don't know if Victoria was even wearing it, right? Because it was like her special. Like Victoria doesn't wear that very often.
Yeah. I mean, I consider that to be part of her costume whenever she says she's wearing her costume. Maybe I'm wrong about that, actually.
I think she says she pulled it out and said it's like, this is more my more formal costume bit. I don't always wear this part. So, but yeah, no, I get your meaning though. Like she has taken the black mask and has put it on Kenzie. And this is ominous. I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. So inside the HQ, the villains have made themselves at home, including Damsel and Sidepiece. Victoria thinks Disjoint probably had eyes on the scene as well.
She's got jokes. She's got jokes.
Yep. Love it.
Damsel, Matt? Is Damsel there or is Swan Song there?
I don't know.
Yeah, because the text says Swan Song. Swan Song and Sidepiece were present, sitting and exchanging words with Tattletale, no doubt about the villain collaboration. I love this as like, first of all, I think this is entirely unintentional, right? Like, I think this is just a typo or a slip up, but it's in the book. And because it's in the book, we get to read whole bunches of stuff into it. So it is perfect. It is perfect to what Victoria is going through right now. That she would make this slip up and not even catch herself, I think is absolutely perfect to how Victoria is doing and the suffering she's going through and the mourning she's going through. And I think it unintentional or intentional, it gives window to what's going through her head right now as she's doing this stuff. It's great. It's great. I love it.
Sure. I mean, I went on like a half-hour mental tangent today thinking like, if the author is sufficiently inhabiting the character and makes a slip-up of this nature while writing, then is it really a slip-up or is it the character's slip-up, in which case it's completely intentional?
Yeah. There we go. You did
Exactly.
it. That's actually, I mean, legitimately, I know we're joking around, but that's legitimately brilliant. And yes, my answer to that is, yeah, totally intentional.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Great. So Rain and Kenzie have a rather heated argument about Kenzie's overuse of tech, which he's commented on previous chapters of this arc. Basically, yeah, it's a heated argument by the standards of both Rain and Kenzie.
Yeah.
I adore this bit where she gradually she gradually shows visually what all the tech sticking through her head looks like, and it like when visualized, she's wearing this great crown of spindly, stabbing, glowing, radiating antennae that are flickering with light. And then on top of that, it says she wore the mask I'd given her, eyeless, while the other figure had 8 overlapping eyes, each pale and ghostly. So this kind of passingly occurred to me, the idea that she's got 8 eyes, she's got these spindly, what could look like antennae or legs coming out of her head. Kind of a Skitter image to me.
Oh shit! No, I like that. I like
just visually, you know.
I also like that the eyes are pale and ghostly, which is kind of like Swan Song when she had her glowy eye stuff on.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I mean it's really good writing. I love the comparison. I love like we go between this like monstrous like multiple eye antenna everywhere to this girl, just this little girl just standing there just hanging out and it's like so proud of herself, and like it's really the comparison there I think is really wonderful and rich. And
right. But I especially love that she has no eyes. The little girl has no eyes.
Yeah.
Her real eyes are the 8 glowing eyes.
Yes.
You know, like that's kind of what we're saying.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
It's Oh gosh.
And I mean, okay, from within, right? Like
Sure.
We're seeing that this is what Kenzie is on the inside, right? She's the tip of the iceberg. She's becoming this creature.
Right.
And they all kind of are, right? But she has the unique ability to show you what the creature looks like. It's pretty great.
It is.
So yeah, pretty much the whole team sides with Rain here. And Kenzie gets increasingly angry and a bit hurt and finally lashes out at Side Piece.
Yeah. So I want to know what you think about this. Like, do we think confronting Kenzie about this is the right call? Because my gut says yes. Like my gut is to side with Rain here and to be like, yeah, absolutely. Like, look at all that tech. That can't be good for you. Rain brings up a lot of good points. You know, infection, it's not like a lot of it's like warped out, but there's still some of it there. If anything goes wrong, if any kind of power shenanigans happens and any of it gets phased out, or just like the fact that you're just running a mild fever constantly, and what if something breaks and overheats? Like, there's just a lot of points of failure here. But I think the book constructs a fairly good counter argument to Rain, even though it's not the way they end up going. And I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I was leaning toward Rain being right. I mean, when he mentioned stuff like if something happens with the portals, if Vista uses her power, everything could go haywire. You could have things sticking out of your eyeballs and like through your brain too. I mean, that's something like, at least that's the way my visualization of this works.
Yeah.
So it does seem very concerning. And Kenzie says something at one point where she's like, "Oh, the odds of that happening are very low." And I'm like, okay, this is the exact time frame that we're expecting Teacher to make some kind of catastrophic move on the city. The odds that something involving dimensional shit is going to happen are like 100%.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like, she's the problem I have with her counter arguments were some of her, it's just very casual dismissal. Like, you could lose an eye. It's like, well, then I'll just make a cool bionic eye. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that is cool. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like having a bionic eye wouldn't be cool, but that doesn't mean you're just like not concerned about horrible infections that could result in loss of parts of your body. Like, just because you want to go bionic doesn't mean you like set things up to go the slow, painful way to it, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a very lazy, like, I mean, it's the kind of thing that a young kid would say, right?
Sure, yeah.
But it's a bad argument.
But Victoria does say that like her tech, Kenzie's tech, is her security blanket, and in this moment, she needs her security blanket more than ever. So let's take away the idea that I think both you and I agree that them executing this plan and the way they're doing it is probably a bad idea. Because they're doing it, right? Whether that's regardless of whether we think it's a good idea or not, it's what's happening. So in a world in which this is absolutely 100% happening and we have no choice, is it better for Kenzie to have all her shit in that world in which she's the one responsible for doing all this stuff? And I kind of want to be like, yeah, I mean, if you're putting this whole crazy plan on her back, I want her to be as connected and as powerful as humanly possible or para-humanly possible in this situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like we're setting up a situation where, like, dang, it sure would have been useful if Kenzie had all of her full capabilities around her, right? And she's going and maybe something bad's going to happen because she didn't, and then she's going to blame either, you know, Rain or the team for making her take it out, or she's going to blame herself for listening to them or being honest with them. I'm obviously extrapolating here, but
sure, yeah.
I can, you know, we wouldn't be creating this situation where Kenzie needs to intentionally take out some of her capabilities if there weren't going to be consequences, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely do, and I'm really interested to see, because I think the consequences are kind of going to play into what was the right call here. Because if the book basically says, oh, everything goes wrong because Kenzie took out the one array that would have helped her see something, then that's an interesting conclusion the book's coming to, right?
Or, yeah, well, or sometimes bad shit just happens even if you're being careful, right?
Yeah,
so,
that's fair.
I think what's going to be interesting is the effect that it has on Kenzie and what conclusion she takes from it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help the damsel sitting here telling her how badass it would be, right?
Right. Like, and her thinking that that's a compelling argument, right?
Yeah, right.
Which is just sad. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they are like, Kenzie does point out that they're kind of babying her here more than they have in the past. And as much as I think like she needs her team to look out for her, like, we do see with Sveta that she's using a lot of very mothery language with her, right? Like, she's using honey and sweetie. She's talking to Kenzie in a very young type of manner, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, so like, as much as I kind of am with Rain about this whole thing, like Kenzie's not wrong that they are treating her differently, because Tristan's like, no, what we do in Breakthrough is we look out for each other and we call each other on our shit. And Kenzie's like, well, I mean, we do that, but like very inconsistently do we do that.
It's funny because when she said that, I was kind of like offended. I was like, no, Breakthrough does a pretty decent job of that actually. But yeah, it's I mean, I think what I'm reacting to is that Breakthrough probably does a better job of that than most hero or villain teams, because most parahuman teams are like drama factories, and Breakthrough is actually like they're all trained basically in understanding and talking to each other in ways that de-escalate rather than escalate.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's
I think you're right. Comparatively, that would be a thing. But I do think like they're very selective in what they choose to specifically call people out on. And I do think they call out the younger members of the team more than the others, for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But I do like this moment where like poor Kenzie is begging, right? Let me help. Let me be useful tonight. I'll go however long you want without using it again, but I don't want to do something this big and do it half blind only for something to happen to you guys. Fuck, Victoria thinks. There was a chance certain members of our team had rubbed off on her. Which ones, Victoria? Is it you? Is it you?
I think it is. I mean, yeah, it's
great. I mean, I love how that's phrased, though. Certain members of our team.
Yeah.
Not me. I'm not going to say me.
No,
yeah.
no.
But I mean sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I mean, I think the text does it a bit more explicitly in a minute, but there's this parallel where the parallel is on the one side, Tattletale and Chicken Little, and on the other, Victoria and Kenzie. Especially lately. I wouldn't have called Kenzie Victoria's project prior to this arc, but this arc began with her literally saying, I guess Kenzie's my project now. So yeah, I
mean, and again, like something we've hit multiple times throughout the story, she's having conversations with Tattletale as if they are parents of their children. They are talking about their kids. You're not going to bring your kid, are you? No, I'm leaving my kid. Will you take care? Like, so yeah, I mean, I think that is textual. I mean, I do like it. Like Victoria, as much as she doesn't verbalize this, like says she's on Kenzie's side here. Like basically like she voices the complaint we just said, whereas that tech probably made more sense. It's her security blanket. She needs her security blanket right now, even if it's a eye penetrating alien hardware security blanket, which only in this book that would happen. But she relates to her on this feeling of, I need to do something. I need to contribute. I need to be at my absolute best, because if I'm not at my best and something bad happens, it will be my fault. And that is such a Victoria thing. And as much as Victoria relates and understands that to me almost makes me immediately side against that, because I'm like, that's what is so self-destructive about you, Victoria, is that mindset. It's noble as hell, but it destroys you. It hurts you so much. And for her to be like, yeah, I get it. I get Kenzie wants to do that. It's like, no, that's not good. That's not good. That's bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the culminating moment, the moment where it all kind of comes to a head is Kenzie says, I have to. I drew in a breath, ready to say the hard truth. We have to, she said. I deflated. And I mean, what an interesting little bit of writing, right?
Yeah.
It's so much is conveyed with like you almost do it with her while reading, like
yeah.
Like she doesn't even voice the idea that like we don't have to.
We don't have to do this. We don't have to do this.
Can't even say it.
Yeah. It doesn't have to. Yeah. We don't, and even if you argue we do have to do this, it doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to. But no, because Victoria agrees. The we have to, she absolutely agrees with that.
Yeah.
And so any resistance to that, as soon as she says something that Victoria agrees with, she just can't bring herself to saying that anymore.
It's so interesting though. Yeah. Because like she, when Kenzie says, I have to, she's like, oh, sweetie, you don't have to, you're just a kid. And but then when she says we have to, she's like, oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
we have to.
We do.
Yeah. Like you include me in it. Who else is going to do it if I don't? Because I'm Victoria.
Yeah. And of course, Kenzie, like as she absolutely loves, is central to this entire plan. Like she is the plan. It is her. right? So like there are two essential people in this plan, Kenzie and Rain, and they are arguing with each other right now.
Yeah.
So we can't be like, Kenzie, you can sit this one out. No, she can't. She literally cannot. She's the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, that's one, kind of funny thing that keeps happening throughout this whole story is like Kinsey is the most powerful and competent member of their team by far. And like it keeps being a problem that's the case because they're like, we really, really shouldn't be putting all of this on her, but we're going to do it again because we have to.
Yeah. And I wonder, I mean, I don't want to dive too much into ripping apart Kenzie, but I wonder how much of that is her very cleverly and subtly pushing things to where that always is the case, right? Because that seems like exactly the situation that Kenzie wants to be into. She wants to be the indispensable person that everyone needs to have around. That's what she likes.
Yeah, I mean, she does do that kind of thing. It's almost, the question is almost more like, is she doing it cognizantly or unconsciously?
I would not say cognizantly. I think like Kenzie can be manipulative, sure. I don't think it would be on that level of like Machiavellian, like
that's pretty mastermindy.
Yeah.
So after Victoria calms her down, she eventually takes out what she doesn't expect to need for the project.
Yeah, and like I said, this is one of those things where you're like, okay, well, now you're definitely going to need that one because you just removed that one.
Yeah.
But again, I wonder. I think you're right that it doesn't necessarily have to mean Rain was wrong, but I do think if the book chooses to make that decision, it is saying something. It is demonstrating a point, whether it makes it implicitly or not.
I really agree, but I think that how that manifests is going to really determine. I'm not confident in saying anything about it before we see what happens. I guess.
Sure. That's fair.
Yeah. So Damsel then tells them about the dreams, the field of living red crystal.
Oh, the colors mean things.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, I bet you just started loving this shit. Like, I think I know you enough. Like, we're getting very, like, kind of, like...
science fiction.
Yeah, it's really starting to get out there and weird. And what I love about it is, like, this has been where the story was going from the very beginning, right? Like, Arc 2... we saw a broken trigger and the guy talked about standing on the edge of the cliff and wanting to fall in. So like we've been slowly laying the seeds for this kind of shard world shenanigans from the very, very, very beginning, and now we're getting there. We're finally diving in. And as much as that's, I mean, like I talked about this on Twitter, but as much as I am absolutely dreading the choices our characters are making right now, I am, like, from a person who loves to read this book, I am so excited for how this is going to play out.
Oh yeah. This is my entire jam. I mean, the moment the thing about Worm that blew my mind so much. I mean, many things did, but one of the main ones was enjoying the hell out of the superhero story and having it suddenly at the like 90% mark or whatever turn into a science fiction, like a really excellent and well thought out science fiction story that retroactively made the whole thing a really awesome science fiction story. And then my head exploded and all the birds around me started chirping.
Yeah.
But
Aiden?
So yeah, I do love this stuff. No, what? Huh? So this moment, I want to talk about this. Damsel says, "Do you want me to say something to Love Lost? She liked me." Scott, did Damsel ever meet Love Lost?
Well, Matt, you sent me down a rabbit hole with this one, and I spent way too long doing research. And I'm going to be really mad if, like, the second I say this, I get a message that's like, no, actually, yeah, they hung out. Because I seriously looked this up for a while. And I plotted out Damsel's, existence in this story so far. And I don't think they did. I don't, like, Ashley hung out with Love Lost during the Hollow Point stuff.
Right.
Damsel was with Breakthrough when they were fighting against Love Lost. I don't think Slashley, Damsel, ever really hung out with Love Lost. So, yes, what you're alluding to here is absolutely true. That this she liked me is a window into Damsel's like ongoing identity crisis thing, which we will see represented literally in her trigger event next chapter.
Yeah, I like this so much that even if you do get that message in a second, I still like it this way.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I think it's one of those really subtle blink if you miss it things that I'm going to be honest with you. I blinked and I missed it, and I'm so happy you pulled it out because I think that's deliciously thematic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's yeah, I mean, and it's yet another thing that does prepare us for what's going to happen in the next chapter.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though we don't spend much time with Damsel, we do get these little tiny bits that make it just delicious.
Yeah, yeah.
So in the process of showing the team a projection of the dream room, Kinsey accidentally, wakes up the guard dog creature.
Accidentally on purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have your theories, don't you? But yeah, the dark section of the chamber opens up. The creature emerges looking like a wave of illusory perspective shifts.
Yep.
Oh, shit.
Now all the walls between the sections are down, and it's 2 hours till Rain goes sleepy time. So much for exploratory mission.
Yep, now it's just combat mission.
Hooray!
All right, 16.8. Rain and Kinsey continue to have friction in this chapter. Kinsey presses Rain for details about the logic by which the dream room operates, such as dates when costume details in the room changed. So she's hoping that she can leverage such an understanding to allow the team to bring in useful stuff.
Yeah, and I'm glad you kind of specifically isolated the fact that their contention from the last chapter carries over here in this, where Rain has technically won an argument. Kenzie has removed tech, and she's not happy about it. Rain's probably not happy about the fact that Curveball, you might die now. Surprise. And he's probably like dealing with the shit on his own. And so they're both kind of annoyed with each other, but they need the plan revolves around them. So them working together and them communicating is required. And so it's this natural conflict has built up where Kenzie's exasperated and impatient because she needs information from him. And he's like freaking out and kind of annoyed with her and annoyed with this whole thing because suddenly this is a much bigger problem for him in a very specific, direct way than he thought it was going to be. It's really great. It's really great.
Yeah, because prior to her taking down the walls in the dream room, I don't think he was mad. I think he was concerned.
Yeah,
and he wasn't getting heated. And I don't know if I'd call it heated because I don't know if I've ever seen Rain heated unless he was getting like love lost tokens. But he's definitely freaking out, like you said.
Yeah,
he's terrified. He is not. He's a brave person, but he is not immune to fear. We know that.
Yeah, but what does he do in this fear? I mean, he deals. Yeah. I love that we got that Aaron. I think that Aaron interlude is the one thing that I think has crystallized my understanding of Rain in more than any other way did. That there's like that simple phrase, like, what does he do in these situations? He deals. And that's exactly what he's doing. Like, there's this great moment where he's basically had everything laid out to him, how terrible, and I'm jumping ahead a bit, but how terrible this is going to go and how likely it would be for him to get hurt. And he just centers himself and then says, what do I have to do? And that's Rain.
Yeah, right. He's had a hard life. He has experience with this shit.
Yep.
Cool.
So I think one of the things I did want to point out here before we move on is that Rain kind of had to like make up a reason for why he needed to immediately call Love Lost and Colt and let them know what was going on, because now they're in danger. In 2 hours when they go to sleep, they're in immediate danger. And they had to kind of not be completely forthright with it because they haven't told anyone else that they're doing this, which is a great way for the book to kind of remind us that the wardens don't know about this, and if they did, they might be pissed off about it. And so just again, the book reminding us again that they're kind of on their own here. They're operating completely independent from any of the other authority sources in this world. They're just going on their own here.
Yeah, it makes me sad because Defiant's totally going to find out about this, isn't he?
He's going to be so mad. He's going to show up at their headquarters and be like, "What the fuck are you? How did no?"
Yeah. He's going to be like, you just said that you were my friend. And literally the first thing I asked you to do as my friend was to not do this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you don't get to come live with me, Kenzie.
Yeah. This is going to be so sad.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Fuck.
Oh, no. I'm so sad now.
Call Defiant right now, guys. There's still time.
There's still time. Well, no, there's not.
I mean, in this point in the chapter, there's still time. Not.
That's true.
In yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So Victoria muses that the room will be going off or could be going off how you see yourself, in which case meditating might help solidify your residual self-image. It's a little Matrix reference for you. Idea 2 is that it's the shard's conception of the person. And she backs this up by explaining how shards obviously need to have some idea of who their host is, what their host looks like, for a variety of reasons, often involving breaker stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I love this as kind of like a continuing reflection of this idea of, you know, the conflict drive and the question of, is it the shard or is it the person? And Lisa's answer immediately jumps into my head. Both. It's always both. And I think that's probably the answer here too, that it is probably a combination of your own self-image and the way the shard sees you. Because I think what we've seen from the mind of the shard as we've gone into it is them kind of wanting to help along. Like, oh, you imagine yourself this way? I help in my certain shardy kind of way. And so I think probably it's a little of both of what they're saying here.
Yeah, I like that. Somebody I think in the Discord earlier was saying how would Taylor show up in the dream room? And,
oh God.
My answer would be as a cloud of bugs, a whole bunch of roaches.
That's great. I love it.
So Darlene says maybe the agents just like masks, and Victoria kind of gives her a metaphorical pat on the head, despite this being the correct answer. I mean, just kidding. Victoria doesn't actually dismiss the idea. I think she gives it some weight. I mean, we kind of know this is true, right? Like from Lastigwinier.
Yeah, textually they like those masks, both literally and figuratively. Yeah, Darlene is right here, and I think, like, you made a joke about it, but that moment where, like, Victoria is this person that is always kind of trying to help, right? And so, like, even in this moment, in the midst of this countdown of panic, she's cognizant enough to be like, hey, Darlene's looking shitty. She could use a win here. Yeah. Let's just give her a little win. And it kind of works, because we see Darlene, like, smile happily after this whole thing. And it's just like, that's Victoria. Like, I get frustrated with her and I rag on her sometimes, but I think at her core, she's just trying to do the best she can. And her awareness of others sometimes is one of her strengths.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we should call that stuff out when it happens.
Yeah.
Totally.
Lest we be accused of being unfair to Victoria.
Yes, that's always important. Tattletale is sure to appraise Rain of how fucking badly this could go if they aren't successful. She also uses the term shard space here, which is interesting, like, because I don't maybe this is old news and I'm just having a mental moment, but when did the characters start canonically using the word shard?
I spent so much time researching the whole damsel thing, I didn't have time to research this one. But I think if anyone's going to use the word shard, I think it's going to be Tattletale, right? That seems sense. Like a thing that she would get gleaned from her power.
Right. I mean, I agree. Like that is the explanation that makes sense to me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about how brutally honest Tattletale's being with Rain here.
Yeah.
I think this is important, and I don't want to rag Tattletale too much for it, because I think it's important for Rain to understand completely what he's going up against, which is bad stuff. But again, maybe doing all this before they knocked down the walls and you were up against the clock would have been a good idea. But whatever. But she is doing it in a very Tattletale kind of way, right? Where it's just barbed. It's like we talked about how she thought her edges were sharp. Her sharp edges were smooth a little bit. They're not smoothed here. They're sharp. These are sharp edges. We're seeing a sharp edged Tattletale here. And I think it makes sense when you see the stuff that she's been through. She's probably not in the best mood right now.
It's also, I mean, we've been talking about this idea of people being careless with their lives, being a sore spot for her. Mm-hmm. And she's just seen, like, everything went from, like, planning phase to, well, now Rain's getting it eaten. She's maybe feeling a little bit angry about that, a little bit frustrated that this turn has happened, and she wasn't able to stop it again. Like, not that she necessarily feels responsible for Rain, but it does seem like a situation got out of control. She couldn't get it in hand, and maybe she does feel responsible for that.
I think she does. Like, I mean, I think her trauma takes many forms, and I think it takes specific forms in that she picks a new Rex, quote unquote, and becomes really concerned with them. But that's not all she does, because she has been person that's desperately using her power to try to keep the city going person, like, she cares more broadly than just the one person at a time. She wants people to think all I care about is Chicken Little. That's all I care about. I don't care about anything else. So I do think there's probably a little bit of resentment here about the kind of absurdity of this plan that she's playing it off as, I'm only here to get some free information and as a favor to you. But I do think part of it's like, I might be able to help here and stop bad stuff from happening. And I'm going to do that. And the way you're being so reckless with this really drives me fucking crazy. But I'm Tattletale and I'm not going to tell you that.
Didn't we get some hints in her interlude that indeed she was like feeling some kind of responsibility or empathy for the whole territory?
I think so. Yeah. I don't remember that specifically, but it sounds familiar to me too.
It was so many years ago, but I think that happened. I love that Nicholas Rain Cage butts into the middle of this with his firm but humble request for help. Basically, sorry, I skipped over a little bit there.
You skipped over some important stuff.
I skipped over some important stuff. So Victoria points out that Tattletale's being shitty, says this time it wasn't my kid who, Tattletale says this time it wasn't my kid who fucked everything up. And Chicken says basically, hey, wasn't Skitter kind of your kid? Ooh. And Tattletale does not like this at all.
Nah, she gets pissed.
She escalates to telling them that it's time to go home right now. She'll be requiring her fee from this point. And then she has a standoff with the kids and ends up blackmailing them with their secrets. And basically, she's going to kind of win this whole encounter having basically lost her head completely, right?
Yeah, I mean, like Victoria totally like just goes, you're being a child. You're more of a child than all the children here. You literally are a child. Obviously this has set her off like so much, and it's so obvious to me that you've scratched Tattletale's nerve here that like I'm surprised. And I think this is actually really smart, because I think what this is going to do is Victoria's going to see Tattletale's trigger event, and I think a lot of who Tattletale is about to click in place for Victoria. And we had the event where we know she calls what Taylor did suicide. We have this event where she lashes out and gets so angry and immature and the most Tattletale-ness that she's been in a long time when we bring up Skitter here. I think this is all laying the grounds for like an unlock to happen when Victoria is forced to experience what happened to Tattletale.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's worth stressing that at no point in Ward has Tattletale behaved quite this way, right? This is a more Worm era, gonna tear you apart and enjoy it and strut away.
Yeah,
type.
I mean, this is right back to bank robbery Tattletale, right? Like This is Lisa, like, I'm gonna reveal your worst secret as a way and use that as a bargaining chip.
And Victoria's reaction to her is more extreme than we've seen, where she's like, you're being a fucking child. Like that. Like we've never seen her really talk to Lisa this way in this book.
She's been snarky and kind of sharp to her, but
this is like a insult to her face type.
Sure.
Sure. That's how, and I, there's an exclamation point in that sentence, Scott. So, yeah. But anyway, Rain is able to shut all this down by just kind of being like, I would really appreciate your help.
Yeah, that's because he's the coolest motherfucker on the planet.
That's right.
Me and Chicken Little agree on that for damn sure.
Yes. I mean, were you imagining him being played by Nick Cage here? Because I sure was.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Sorry.
He's too young for that. That'd be weird.
Just like a really young Nick Cage.
So what do you think about this? I mean, Rain has kind of he's definitely not like the leader of the group, but he's been making like leadership type calls for this group for a bit now. Like he's the one confronting Kenzie on her shit. He's the one recognizing where this conversation is going, that he needs to shut it down. Whereas Victoria is just like right in there escalating the conversation. Like fuck you child, like going off. Rain's like, okay, let's calm this down. So I think like we're seeing like Victoria's in some shit right now. Tristan, our other normal leader, is dealing with some shit right now. Swansong, well, we know what happened to her. So like we're seeing Rain kind of step up in some moments here, and I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's interesting to track ever since the big Amy touch moment. declared Master Stranger. Vicky declared Master Stranger on herself. Then like 800 more things happened, but we never really revisited that and said like, okay, I guess I'm fine now.
Right.
I guess I'm back in the leadership position and you can trust me now.
Yeah.
A lot of time has passed too, right? Like it was 5 days passed between the end of last arc and the beginning of this one.
I'm just laughing at the fact that like in this story, a lot of 5 days is indeed a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's vast. But yeah, like it's, I don't know if we know where Victoria's head is right now regarding leadership. I guess we'll see soon, huh?
I mean, maybe. I think she is still kind of like taking her foot off the pedal a little bit here. Like we saw that she agrees with Kenzie about the whole tech thing, but she doesn't force the issue. She kind of she sees the way the group is kind of leaning in that and doesn't really offer a challenge to it. She just kind of goes with the flow. And that is not, I mean, I guess you could argue that leadership sometimes is recognizing that that's what you need to do in those moments, but she hasn't necessarily been directing the group as much. She's got other things to worry about.
She's still like sick and miserable too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So she's got a lot of excuses.
Sure.
So Tattletale concedes Rain's generous kind of humble, approach and gives a good, terrifying rundown of all the horrible stuff they could expect in the Shard world. But then she also admits that it's educated guessing, which we know is code for basically unconstrained or under-constrained extrapolations using her power, which can be very wrong when Tattletale's power is involved.
Hooray, that's concerning.
But it's fun because it's only injecting concern into our minds.
Yeah,
right?
fair.
Like dramatic irony concerningness.
Yeah, that's very true. It is. But I mean, how much do you love this stuff though? Because this is abstract as hell. And I just I like this paragraph here. You're going to find the other stuff on the far side a little less consistently solid, and from what Damsel said, it's going to be a bit like Everything's Gone Breaker. They like structure and they like redundancy, so expect details pulled from host's awareness, specific and collective. When you don't have that structure, you'll have a vast amount of connective tissue. So
which is pretty right on, right?
I mean, that's kind of exactly what we see in the dream sequences, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I don't really know what Everything Has Gone Breaker means exactly, but definitely all the stuff about structure and details
means
and stuff. Yeah.
Crazy.
Apparently so. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. They also discuss how this thing that Tattletale has just described kind of sounds like an Endbringer. Uh-huh. And Victoria's like, hey, this kind of sounds like an Endbringer. And she's like, nah. She said, smaller in stature, more limited in scope. I realized I was holding my breath and I didn't release it. I felt like there was a but coming. It's the same scaffolding, same construction material, similar principles. So not exactly an Endbringer, Matt, but not an Endbringer.
Right. It's like it doesn't have like some particular power that can destroy a continent or whatever, but it's probably still completely invulnerable and giant and etc.
It's just a really good, it's just a good way, I think, of setting the stakes in a way in which we, the reader, and Victoria, the point of view character, completely get it. Like now we have, let's pretend this thing is like an Endbringer, and now you have a good understanding of how difficult this fight is going to be. Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah.
There, like we talked about before, though, there's also this wonderful beat where the two moms talk about their kids. And Tattletale's like, you're not taking your kid with you, right? And you're like, no, she's staying here. Well, if something happens to you, what do you want me to do with her? And she's like, well, maybe get in contact with Defiant and Dragon. And Tattletale is like, I'll waive my usual fee. I'll help out, no problem. Just if you ignore Chicken Little's loose lips, which is obviously related to some of the Taylor stuff, right? That they was talking about.
Yeah, I think that's simply just that Tattletale knows that Victoria intuited that he is I don't know if they know the word bud, but she's a cape nerd. She probably understands the idea that people pass down shard traits, and she gets that his shard came from Taylor's in some way.
Yeah, and also I think her involvement in Taylor's stuff, I think, is probably something she doesn't want the world at large to know.
That too.
And I mean, it's a very sensitive topic for her. So she doesn't want everyone knowing about this stuff, and she's willing to do favors to make that happen.
Yeah.
For someone who knows so much, she's sure really selective in what she tells other people.
It's true. See, I view this as being very much centered around protecting Chicken Little, and that being her main priority, because I think her idea is like assholes like Teacher would go after Chicken if they knew that he had the same kind of template of the power that was used to take over the world, basically. And if they got their hands on him, they could hack him the same way Amy hacked Taylor. That was kind of my. It's a weird number of logical leaps to be making for what I'm calling a automatic assumption, but that was my automatic assumption. Anyway,
yeah, no, I like that. I did not get there, but that seems reasonable to me.
So we cut to a bit later. Sveta is walking everyone through a guided meditation, and she's pretty good at this, by the way. Mm-hmm. Victoria's mind wanderings are also some very good writing. Yeah,
I just wanted to pull out some of it because it's so good. She's trying to focus and do her thing. Like, I love that the idea of focusing. Like, Victoria spends so much time, like, not thinking, trying hard not to think stuff, you know? Mm-hmm. That the idea of meditation and just kind of opening your mind is like very reckless for her, because that like lets the bad thoughts come in. And so she can't do it quite in the way that Sveta wants her to do it. So she does it in her very Victoria way. But we get this bit of information about her costume that I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Matt, I don't think we ever got some of this stuff as explicitly stated as it is here. Where it says, I chose a black costume because Amy's was white, gold because of gold mourning. My icon at my shoulders with its spires was evocative of the wretch's hands. That we knew. The symbol extending to be a circle with a dot within it to emulate the armbands that so many we wore. That I think we knew as well. But I don't think we knew about the black was specifically chosen to be the opposite of Amy. Did we? Am I wrong there?
I don't remember that being mentioned. It's possible. When I read it, it struck me as new information. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. I think that's fascinating. I think it ties into the use of black so much more as her specifically trying to get away from that. But I love this idea where she kind of says aloud what I think everyone was thinking was, if I thought of Amy and the wretch, and if those thoughts took hold, if this meditation worked, would the me of the dream room be the wretch? That's a terrifying thought. Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, potentially very useful though.
Well, would it? I guess it depends on what version of the wretch, Matt. Is it in the hospital version where she can't move?
I don't know. It would be interesting. I mean, I like the writing just as like, this is kind of the internal thought loop of someone who isn't particularly good at meditation, trying to meditate, right?
Yeah. Well, and like I said, like, I think meditation is inherently a dangerous thing for how she processes her trauma. Because she works so hard to not think about certain things.
Right. Well, if she were good at meditation, then that would actually make it easier. But I get the point that every time she tries to meditate, it probably goes into the shitter like this. So.
Yeah.
So just because I had to kind of sketch this out because I wasn't really paying attention the first time that I read it, because it didn't, certain things didn't register in my brain the way they should have. But the people in the cube are Tristan, Victoria, Damsel, Sveta, and of course Rain is going to end up in the dream no matter what. It's basically just Breakthrough, plus Damsel, of course. But all of those people plus Tattletale, Aiden, Candy, and Darlene end up inside. Yeah. So we're not going to really have another chance to talk about it other than to say, oh, why'd that happen?
I don't know, Matt. Why do you think it happened? Do you think maybe Kenzie accidentally did it? Because she wanted to go?
I don't know. I mean, I thought, so honestly, the first time you said that, I was like, no. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, well, maybe she thinks this is the only way she can protect her team.
Well, I mean, like, her being left out is a very specific problem for her.
Yeah, it's true.
So this is leaving her out of the dream room shenanigans. I could see a person who oopsed her way into it, or it could just be some shard stuff. I mean, it doesn't have to be that, but that's what jumped into my head.
Like, it'd be an interesting idea if, like, she oopsed her way in and then Darlene was linked to her and then that dragged everybody else in or something like that.
That would be fun. Yeah. She set it up where just she would go, but yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I had another thought, which was just like, well, what if the shard is more powerful than people gave it credit for? And it was like, nope, gonna grab all you because I can do that, and
This
I
seems
always
fun.
could.
I like networks. Bring all these people.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna kill all of you because you're onto me, basically. Cool.
All right, Matt, let's do it. It's
So
shard space time.
So like it's hard to man. This is like a whole nother chapter, right?
Yeah.
Like what we just read was basically a chapter. This is at least another chapter worth of like content. I don't know if it's like the word count of a chapter, but it's damn dense stuff. So we go through all these dreams as we go in.
Yeah, and I want to talk. We'll get through this one first, but I want to talk about, you know, specifically the structure of the order of how these are laid out and how it works to slowly reveal what's going on here. Because I think as much as I love the content of each and one of these little vignettes in these sections, I think it's beautiful writing. It's tragic. It's horrifying. It's everything that I love about this book. I think the way in which it is structured makes it brilliant.
Yeah, right. The confusion followed by the unraveling of the mystery.
Yeah. And the horror as you have fully realized what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So Victoria battles another girl at a basketball video game in a mall arcade. Her dad and mom watch. Dad completely disinterested. Mom mentally elsewhere. In the video game, she controls heroes wearing basketball uniforms. Her parents are distracted by strangers wanting to talk to famous heroes. We have this recurring motif of her using the joystick going down, down, down.
I love it.
She wants to show that she can be excellent in her own way. When it's her moment to take the game-winning shot, her opponent blatantly shoves her, and the shame of crying out when she hits the ground, and her mother's condemning, disappointed stare, and her dad's complete inattention, and Amy's reaction too, which is also complicated.
Yeah.
It says, "I missed the shot," and then she gets to make the the foul. Jesus, I don't know anything about basketball.
It's the free throw.
The free throw.
Yeah.
It says, "I missed the shot with everyone except for 3 people still watching. Their love was conditional." It makes you wonder, like, I get that this is like a metaphor. This is a twist. But it makes you wonder if her real trigger event was when she was shoved or when she missed the free throw, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Has she always been kind of lying about that? I don't know. It'd be interesting to go look through things and see if we can figure that out.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I kind of want to say yes, absolutely, that it was not the shove. It was this final failure on top of all the other failures. This whole section is so good, Matt. The writing here is so good. Like the detail here, how Victoria immediately starts recognizing people, but not the scene. She's like, these people look familiar, but I don't know why. Like this whole scene seems wrong, but how the controls are comfortable in her hand. It feels right, but it still feels wrong. We quickly realize that this is her trigger dream, but Victoria didn't play a basketball video game. She played, so we're like immediately confused and disoriented. And I think the one thing that makes this work more than anything is even though we're confused as to what's happening here, the emotion of the event still comes through. Carol's disappointment, Mark's indifference, Amy's excitement, which carries its own pain with it. The setting is wrong, but the emotions are correct, which means even as we're confused and questioning what the fuck is going on, which is exactly what we're doing, we understand that key part of it, and that's why this works. And I'm glad you pulled out the dribble, the down, down, down. It's such a good recurring beat. It's such a good scene. We even see this little hint towards the future where I think Victoria notices that Mark is paying special attention to a man with tattoos and a beard, which is, as it turns out, a fallen person that's wandering through the mall. We don't even realize that at the time, but it becomes obvious later in the story. It's really, really good.
Yeah. And I like that the setting of there's just a semantic connection between arcade and mall.
Sure.
So later when he adds the connective tissue, if you will, and you get what's going on, it's very easy for you to make that connection. Oh, mall arcade. She's also at the mall.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like I haven't been to a mall that had an arcade in like years.
Oh,
but
man.
I know that malls have arcades in an abstract sense.
My mall used to have. I remember wasting so much money on the Jurassic Park: The Lost World shooter with my dad. Just
Me too.
$20 went in like 5 minutes because it was so expensive.
Let's go to an arcade, Scott.
Okay. We live in different states, Matt.
Oh, shit. Forgot. So next, a girl wanders through a large empty house. She finds her brother's body in his bedroom, and she tries to help him in a panic. She stumbles out to find a phone to call for help, but realizes she's too late to do anything and thinks to herself, or says to herself, I feel so stupid.
I love and I hate this scene. It is awful.
You see how like I just couldn't summarize it any more than that. It's like, it just sucks.
Yeah, no, I think you did as good of a job as could be expected. Yeah, it really sucks. I mean, it's like she starts off and she thinks it's Sveta, and then she thinks, oh no, it's not Sveta, maybe it's Ashley, but no, it's Lisa. As soon as we see her brother, we know exactly who this is, and we've never seen this scene, right? We've never seen Lisa's trigger event, just like we've never seen Victoria's trigger event, but we know enough about them to immediately recognize these scenes. And even with the changes, as we start to realize that there's changes, it's close enough to where we line it up with our understanding of what goes down.
So was your assumption that in reality, Tattletale did find her brother's body like this, basically?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I think so. And I think that's one thing we can get into, because there's a lot of weirdness going on here, right? Where like spoilers to what we're about to talk about, but this dream is latching their trigger events onto the only thing it understands, which is this very limited understanding of the mall and the triggers that happen in the mall. So it's kind of like trying to puzzle these pieces together with what it knows, because as Lisa said, structure is very important to it. It'll take the individual understanding and the whole understanding and try to meld them together into some sort of structure. So that's what it's doing here. But yeah, things are different. So we can't take everything we're seeing here as exactly the way it happened. But I think that part of it, like we said, the emotional core of what happened as we saw through Victoria is still there. So I want to say that.
Yeah. Well, this is the one that feels the most veridical. Like she doesn't find her brother in like the mall changing room of the Macy's.
Sure.
She finds him in his literal bedroom in his house, in their giant house. We know they were rich. They had a big house.
Yeah.
That's all details that make sense. And then right outside their front door is a shopping center, which doesn't make sense. So
yeah,
for whatever reason, Tattletale's trigger gets to be probably, it just seems more like what it actually was.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a reason for that.
Yeah, I do too, actually. That just occurred to me just now, but yeah, I mean, everyone else's gets like put through the ringer, even Sveta's.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
so a group of kids banter rudely with each other as they put vulgar words up on the kiosks and scrape obscenities onto the decorative fake rocks. In the background, the Fallen arrive. Again, this is a constant background presence, though the characters themselves rarely pay attention to it. And then Nadia slips in her angry, sad graffitiing, and she falls off the ladder.
Mm-hmm. So this is Sveta's trigger event. And this is, rule of 3. Once we get to the third one, we've noticed a pattern and we can start to suss out a hypothesis, right? And this is why I think the structure of this is so brilliant, Matt, because we start with Victoria. It's a trigger event we, the reader, have never seen, but we know a lot about it, right? Like, more importantly, we're in Victoria's head. So we get confirmation from her that this is wrong, but close. So it establishes that role. Then we go to Lisa, another trigger event we know about, but have never seen. We don't have a point of view to point out what's specifically different, but the text specifically draws our attention to some of the differences, the juxtaposition of them all. So we get that spelled out for us. Then we get Sveta. And here's, for the third one, this is a trigger. Well, not a trigger, but this is an event that we've seen before, right? We've seen this scene on the side, playing on the rocks next to the water and everything that goes down there. We've seen it. So we know exactly what is different here. They're, instead of playing on rocks next to their little village by the ocean, they're on these fake rocks in front of a mall. And this is when things start to get interesting, right? Because this is, first of all, Sveta did not trigger in the normal way. Sveta was a cauldron cape. She was given a vial, and that's how that went down. So we kind of get the feeling that out of anyone that it's seen, this shard doesn't know what to do with this and how to mesh it into what it understands, right? Because this is also very different. The way it goes down, the way the event goes down is not quite what it was before, right? Like some of the emotions are there, but we don't see the Sveta that felt responsible in the same way that we saw in that moment, right?
I think some of the emotions are actively rejiggered and reapportioned, because my recollection is that her brother or whatever, the other little boy who was there was the one who got sad and offended, and then he fell.
Yeah, I mean,
on the rocks.
He is the one that falls here. It is not her that falls.
Oh, it's not her that falls?
No,
oh.
no.
Wow, I'm shitty at reading. Okay. But she is the one who is upset, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but in reality, we don't actually know what happened in reality, but in her previous dream or memory or whatever, she wasn't upset by that. I'm pretty sure.
Well, I mean, so Sveta's this memory was she was giving was it her brother? I think it was her brother. She's giving her brother a hard time. She's making fun of him, and therefore he went out and tried to be more reckless and dangerous to prove something, and then he fell and got hurt, and then she felt responsible for that.
And she went after him.
And she went after him. Yeah.
But in this, but what I'm saying is in this dream, isn't she the one that falls off the ladder?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to figure this out later.
All right.
But anyway, it's different. I'm pretty sure it's different in subtle ways.
Yeah, I mean, there was one thing I want to point out here, though, that is very, very telling, though, is someone says to her, "You're looking good, Nadia," almost like you're a real girl, which is literally like taking all her future shit and putting it into this vision, right? Because that is not a concern. That was not a concern of the Sveta of that time frame. And of course, her name is Nadia here when that was not her name back then either. So like these little subtle changes, I think, are really interesting.
Yeah, right. That's really interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so moving on to blah blah blah. Yes, the next one. We have a girl vomiting in the mall bathroom, then coming out to meet a large, much older man outside who buys her some ice cream, which she obviously doesn't want. And I'm not exactly sure that I'm keyed into the exact fucked up head game that he's playing here, but basically the broad strokes are he's massively overfeeding her and like pressuring her to eat when she obviously doesn't want to eat, and then repeatedly offering like dangerous temptations to take her away from her father, which I don't think he really means. It's very fucked up dynamic. And she's having a horrible time.
It's monstrous. This man is a monster. Keith, like he's coming off as a very like kind of white knighty person. I think he looks at himself as the person who is saving her from this terrible life. He says specifically that he knows her father accepts payment to take out his daughters and his wives, thus implicating him in what he's doing. And that's what's happening here, right? That he's paid Heartbreaker to take out this child who I'm not sure how old she is here. Like 6, maybe, like really young, right? Like really uncomfortably young. She's just disgusting. Like he's it's so creepy and terrible. And just like the constant feeding. And I think if you asked Keith what he was doing, I think he would say he's doing well by this girl. Look, he's giving her treats and he's taking her out and he's taking her away from this terrible life. And look, he'll save her. All she has to do is give the word and I'll save you. And if you want me to take your sister with you, I'll save her too. I'll do it. It's for you. It's monstrous. It's terrible. And of course, this is Candy, right? Who we know her power is specifically to give people hallucinations as if they're experiencing the thing that they love the most. And then it will absolutely destroy their ability to love that thing. And here she's been plied with an absurd amount of ice cream to the point where her stomach is sick and she's having to force it down. I mean, that's the most disgusting part, right? Like her stomach is flipping. She's just puked everything in her stomach up. And just the idea of eating more ice cream is revolting to her. And yet she's still doing it because she's so afraid. And I hate this. I hate it.
Wasn't she the one who had the letters to her dad's friend? that Kinsey read that she wasn't supposed to read.
Yeah.
So that's
that could be
a
this
connection
guy.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of her recovery, I think.
But yeah, of course, this is now in the shopping center, right? So now, the thing that I like about this is now that after 3, we've kind of started to get an understanding of what's going on. So now the text can be a little looser with the mystery and can just be a little more upfront with the specific emotions of the people. And of course, now we're seeing people who we were completely unaware of what their trigger events were, right? Like Victoria, Lisa, Sveta, we knew what happened to these people. Generally, some of them we didn't see it, but we knew it. Here's the first one where we had no idea how this went down. This is completely new to us, but the text is confident enough that after the first 3, we've kind of started to get the gist that it can move into these, and I think that's good structuring. Like if you had started with Candy, I think the confusion would have lessened the emotional impact of the horror of what's happening here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're still a little bit I wouldn't say confused. You're still trying to put together exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
But I think by this point you're like, I get it. The mall. Yes. So yeah, you can focus on the trigger events themselves.
Yeah.
Next, Darlene is pulled by her father into the special event space in the bowels of the mall. Heartbreaker is never actually described. Only his voice is described, which is awesome. He's fucking evil. Holy shit. He mind whammies all the girls, all the guests at a girl's birthday party, and then he forces Darlene to pick who she likes and who she doesn't like. And explicitly, this is one of those tests. Remember how Regent told us about the fucked up tests that his dad would do?
Yep.
This is one of those. So now we get a little bit more sympathy for Alec, I guess. This ends with, "We are a family, my Darlene. That is all you will ever need, yes? Have or need, yes? Blood ties us together. Consanguinity."
I hate it.
Which is her power, right? I mean, this is a perfectly, horribly fucked up way for her power to make sense.
That is literally like the idea of connection and God.
And
I hate it. I hate it so much.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, like, we know she has a thing with being tied up, right? We know that specifically, and we don't see that here. So that seems like something that maybe happened before this moment.
Yeah, it's true.
I love what you said about like only his voice. Like he's like a presence here, not in the physical sense, but in the complete overbearing, overpowering sense, where even his voice. Even just his voice, we don't need to describe him in the scene because he's there. He's in every part of it, and it's the worst. It makes I'm so disgusted. Like the fact that like what she has to do to this one kid who she doesn't like because he said I smelled funky. Extinguish him, Darlene whispered. That Matt, like, it's horrible.
Yeah, and as like a kid, and basically she's doing this because it's better than whatever Heartbreaker is going to do to the kid, right?
Yeah.
Which is the most fucked up thing, right?
Yeah. It's disgusting. Like,
yeah.
I wish this guy wasn't dead so we could kill him again.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Any reservations we had about Imp going off on her own and doing this?
Yeah.
We just have to contextualize this. And like, she doubtless heard all these stories from Regent and was like, oh yeah. No, this guy's dead.
Yeah. And I'm remembering something about how like after Regent left, the other kids were punished. Right. And
yeah, I think so.
This strikes me as the type of thing Heartbreaker would do after he's lost some of his kids, to remind his kids about how they're connected. We are family, right? This is all you will ever have or need. Yes. So this could be a direct result of some of the other kids leaving.
Yeah. I mean, it fits really well. I'm glad you said that, because it seems like if Heartbreaker was obsessing about that idea, right, it would be because someone left.
Fucking monster. Ugh.
I know. Okay. On to something more lighthearted.
Yeah, sure.
So the explosions from the terrorist attack begin, and Aiden runs through the mall looking for the adults who are meant to take care of him, but he can't find them. And he's saved by a man with a thick beard, old-fashioned glasses, a piercing in his nose, and kind eyes. Snag lifts him to a safe place, but then Aiden is left stranded there.
Oh, kind eyes.
Yeah, so remember the other day when I talked about how like I never cry or tear up when reading?
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, that sentence where it described Snag as having kind eyes was just absolutely emotionally gutting to me, and I like had to stop for a second. I don't know why. I think it's just because it's such a tragic idea, like what Snag turns into, and then even now after I mean, I kind of assume this is like Snag ghost. Like this isn't just a figment. This is Snag trapped in shard hell, basically.
Oh man,
I don't know
you
if
made it worse.
Well, that was what I assumed. Like this is shard hell Snag. This is he's actively still trying to save the kid that he finds in the maze. You know.
Yeah, I guess to a certain definition of that. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think you're right. This did not affect me. I think it's fascinating how sometimes things just emotionally hit you in ways you didn't expect. But I think the kind eyes there, I mean, that is something that was established about Snag before. But it's really tragic. And I mean, the interesting thing about this whole thing is that Aiden, like, we didn't really know exactly how Aiden triggered. But if I'm remembering correctly, I looked this up, and so I hope I can read. But he basically said he had a nightmare, an old nightmare he hadn't had in a long time. And when he woke up, he was like sleepwalking, and then it happened. That's all we really knew. But so we see the event here is basically he ends up really high. Like he's put on a high place and he's stuck up there. And it says right when it cuts off from his chapter, it says something to the effect of the little bit of space turned into like 5 stories. So it was like only 10 feet and it turned into 5 stories. So he's up really high, which could be, you know, interpreted as why you would want birds. If you're really high up, you'd want to fly because you can't get down.
Interesting.
But we don't know the detail exactly how he triggered. So this is one again that I think is put here near the end because we started to really get what was going on. And I think this is the moment when we bring Snag into it, when we specifically say this is Snag, we now know what's happening. We now know, okay, this is the shopping center, not just a shopping center that's happened to be here. This is the shopping center. This is the fallen attack. And every trigger event has been placed on top of this event.
Yeah. The connective tissue, the context.
Yeah.
I really like this idea that, this, once again, we're focusing on the emotions rather than the actual events. And the emotion is he's isolated. He's impossibly isolated, almost like if a little kid wakes up like literally outside, doesn't know where they are. They don't know how they're going to get back home, and they will reach out, right, and connect to a whole bunch of bird minds.
Sure, yeah. I like to think, I don't think it's stated explicitly, but my headcanon for this is like he sleptwalk onto a roof, and he like woke up, and he's just like on a roof somewhere, and on the roof of the building he was in, like maybe near the edge or something, and it's like oh shit.
Yeah, I do like this idea. Mm-hmm. So the next one is another one where I think that the shard is having to make some adjustments because it's such this shard is probably very confused about what the hell's going on too.
Yeah.
But so Ashley is beaten by her father as the panicked mob surges around them. It says Ashley turned her head and she stared past her longer hair at herself, small and short-haired. She cringed, fearing the next blow, and the other stood a little taller. "Come on," he shouted, gripping them by the arm.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Like, everything about this is bonkers.
Yeah, it's we could spend an hour talking about this because I mean this is fascinating. So like basically the situation here is there's a space for one of them to hide, but there's only room for one of them, and her dad is there beating her and telling her, pick which one of you want it to be. Which one of you survives? That's what's happening here.
Yeah.
And holy shit, like it's a wonderful way to illustrate exactly what's going on with Damsel right now, is that like the struggle that she's pretending like she's totally got a handle on, that I think we saw in the last chapter hints towards maybe she doesn't have as much of a handle on it as she thought. And this is the dilemma. And she's paralyzed by this choice. She cannot make this choice. And each time, each punch, each hit from her father makes her smaller and makes the short-haired, aka Swan Song version of herself, stand a little taller. Grow a little bit, assert herself a little bit more.
Yeah, and basically be something that I think Damsel envies and would rather be like, but can't because she's still ruled by fear. And I mean, the language here, I don't think I'm reading too much into this. Gripping them by the arm. Okay, it's not gripping them by the arms. That would imply a man with two hands gripping one arm of each of his two children. It's not gripping her by the arm, which would imply him grabbing one of Damsel's arms. It's gripping them, plural, by the arm, singular, implying gripping both of them
by the arm.
The arm, right? It's just this really fascinating way of conveying this duality in suffixes.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right there. I love that. I don't think I picked up on that specifically. I definitely picked up on like arms are something very important to to Ashley's whole thing.
To Ashley specifically, and to grasping dude head.
Yeah. Which I mean, we'll get to that in a second, but I did do my old control find for hand in this chapter just to see how many times hands are mentioned. It's a lot. Hands are mentioned in this chapter a whole lot, Matt. I think there's like 40 something instances of the word hand used compared to the previous couple chapters where there was like 20 and like 15. So an elevated amount of hand references here.
Okay. Good to know. So yeah, that was awesome. Again, not really her trigger event, right?
No, not at all.
It's been put in a blender. Some of the elements are there, but some of them are new things.
Yeah, her dad being there is definitely a part of it. So, of course, her dad is there. But yeah, it reflects, I think you're right, that it reflects the confusion. Like, what do I do with this? There seems to be two. What? Why?
Yeah. Right. Why do I have to choose?
Huh?
Yeah. So Kinsey next is buffeted by the crowd. Her foster dad tried to hold on to her, but in her panic, she accidentally injures one with skin under her nails, which is a visual motif that repeats twice in this chapter. Earlier, it was Rex's skin under Tattletale's nails. And yeah, it reminds us, of course, of the focus on hands in Cradle's interlude, which was something that I don't think I noticed at all. You absolutely nailed. That is absolutely very, very evident in that interlude.
Yeah.
The violence of her panic, of her trying to hold on to her dad's, is what causes them to hesitate just long enough that they lose her.
Yeah,
which is emotionally exactly what happened.
Yeah, I love it. I love the skin under the nails motif repeating both. You're absolutely right that the emotional core, and that's the center of this whole thing, right? Is that the specifics of the trigger events are bended around this new thing, but that emotional core is I was trying too desperately to hold on, and I hurt them, and that hurt caused them to hesitate just long enough, just a little bit, just long enough for us to be ripped apart forever. And it's all my fault, and that is just perfect writing, but just absolutely devastating. Like,
right.
I was not prepared for this chapter, Matt. I really wasn't. Like, I was all like so excited. I was so excited for this concept of the dream room. It's like, well, we're going to invade shard space, and it's going to be cool as shit. We're going to be fighting the shards in their own planet. And I forgot about this whole trigger dream thing. I totally forgot about it.
I did too.
And then it's just,
yeah, right. It's like a surprise interlude almost, right? Because you're getting different perspectives, sort of, yeah.
We haven't mentioned that one thing Victoria is doing throughout this whole thing is like interjecting with thoughts every once in a while, and usually they are ways in which the text allows it to clarify something for us. So someone's calling someone Candace, and Victoria specifically says, "Candy, I'm so sorry." She identifies Tattletale for us in case we hadn't just gotten there. She identifies Snag for us, but it also is just her noting how this is emotionally affecting her, which I think is important.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole idea of this dream room is fascinating because basically it's boiling down these people's trauma into a kernel that will hurt them just as much while being very, very simplified. But what it's also doing, which you almost have to assume the shards don't understand, is it's allowing them to share this with each other.
Yeah.
And thus come to a place of shared healing, right?
Yeah.
Because at first it was only showing them. At first it was only showing them the shit that was gonna make them mad at each other, right? Or at least it was only showing them what was gonna make them mad at Rain. It was underemphasizing the Mama Mather stuff, for example.
Sure.
But now it's just almost it's so stripped down, and I think maybe this has to do with the inclusion of Colt. I don't know, but it's so stripped down that it's just empathy generating.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that's what this is doing. I absolutely like if we step back a moment, maybe we should finish up poor Tristan and Byron first before we step back and talk about this as a whole.
Which is a pretty short one,
yeah.
But Tristan, he's trapped under the unconscious Byron in the stampede. Byron's arm crushing his throat, and Tristan stabs his brother to try to wake him, but kind of the text kind of makes the point, stabs him maybe more times than makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the interesting thing about this, again, we talk about the emotionality of the scene, and it's a recreation of the scene, but it's changed a little bit, right? Because this text specifies as the pressure on Tristan's throat was involuntary, right? First of all, it doesn't know what to do because Byron's unconscious, and the shard's like, I don't get that. What's going on here? And so it recreates the situation, but with an unconscious Byron. But the fact that the choking was involuntary, to me, my read on this is a changed understanding of the concept of blame in this whole situation, right? Because I think if you would have had maybe a Tristan from an earlier version of the story explain the trigger event, he would have said, my brother was fucking choking me. He was trying to kill me, and I stabbed him because of it. And now the pressure on Tristan's throat in this version of it is involuntary. There's a lack of blame there, a lack of intent, a lack of purpose in what Byron is doing to Tristan right now, which reflects, I think, the changing nature of their relationship.
And I adore that. And because it's from Tristan's point of view, and we're capturing the emotionality of what was painful about this, maybe what's painful about this from Tristan's point of view is that he stabs his brother again and again, even after he doesn't need to.
Yeah.
So again, the shard is sort of saying like, oh, so you had your trigger event, but what I can really use to fuck with you is your feelings of guilt toward the way you treated your brother.
Yeah. I guess one thing we do have to step back because I got a little lost in this.
Yeah.
We do have to remember that we are still in Victoria's point of view, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
true.
we are seeing this. So it is Victoria that notes that the pressure on Tristan's throat was involuntary, not Tristan himself that notes that, right? But I still think we can attach meaning to that scene. For sure.
Yeah. I don't know how I don't know how else you would write that to convey that it was super obvious that Byron's unconscious and couldn't possibly be doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe this is a pretty minor detail, and I don't actually remember, but I feel like after Colt started being in the circle, the nature of the dreams became a bit different.
They did, They did alter it a little bit
in a way such that like maybe Victoria's getting a little bit of bleed through in terms of what the people were actually experiencing and thinking. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So awesome stuff. I mean, painful and monstrous and harrowing, incredibly good writing, just a series of gut punches. And then a fucking clown car of capes spills out of the doors of the mall into Rain's dream, where he just laughs at them desperately.
And then they enter the dream room.
Yep. Victoria has has her costume, but no power. The watchdog emerges, a monster made of reaching limbs, its a grasping self.
Hey, buddy.
And Victoria's like, Cradle, help. And Cradle doesn't help.
Of course Cradle doesn't help. What were we thinking? Cradle's just going to be a good guy now? No.
Cradle's going to be like, oh, this is awesome. I can kill literally all of my enemies at once.
Hooray. Thanks, guys. So that's how the chapter ends, is Cradle, the curse your inevitable betrayal. But so as we wrap up, I want to get back to that high level conversation, right? I want to talk about what we've just done in this chapter and why we've just done it. And I think this is really fascinating because one of the things I think about, we have these trigger events, we have these moments of each individual people's worst experiences their life. And I immediately in my head go back to Worm, and I go back to that conversation in Fugly Bob's where they were talking about Trigger, and Taylor didn't realize that it was kind of gauche to talk to someone about what happened to them. And there's this idea that existed in the world of capes that you don't talk about your trigger, you don't talk about your trauma, you don't share that with people. And I don't think that was a good thing. I don't think not sharing the stuff you're struggling with the people you care about is a good idea. And that was just the general, this is how things worked. And now in this story, we've had all of our main characters, all of our most important characters directly experiencing a version of the worst moment of each other's life together. Yeah. They've all felt the way it feels. They've all seen what happened and how it went down. They all know everything that happened to each other. And I think that is in the end going to be a good thing. I think it is going to lead to an understanding amongst characters that never would have been possible beforehand.
Yeah, right. I think that, I mean, is it fair to say like this is kind of what you're building to when you start a superhero story about a bunch of therapy superheroes?
Yeah. I mean, they
like
just went through the fucking most intense group therapy session of all time.
Right. Exactly. It's telepathy, right?
Yeah.
It's basically telepathy.
So the way we solve the world's problems is we get Kenzie and we hook every human being across all planes of existence up to this dream room, and we just spend a couple years just going one by one through everyone's worst issue. And then everyone understands everyone, and we're good.
Yeah, no,
Problem
there's nothing
solved.
There's nothing wrong with that idea, Scott, and I applaud you for thinking of it and saying it.
So brave and so true.
So brave. All right. I mean, honestly, I feel like we could actually talk about everything happening in that chapter for a lot longer, but we're not gonna, unfortunately.
I mean, I just like it's great. It's wonderful. It's a great idea. Yeah. I hadn't even considered it because I had totally forgotten about the dream stuff. There is a power to that shared experience, and I think I'm really excited to see how this plays out. Because like I said, I think through seeing what happened to Tattletale, Victoria has gotten an understanding of Lisa she never had before. You know, Victoria's a smart person, and she's gonna take the talk about suicide and how Tattletale feels about suicide, how Tattletale feels about Taylor, how Tattletale feels about Chicken Little. And she's going to take her trigger event and she's going to map out understanding of this person that she never had before. And I think understanding of that kind only leads to empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Totally. I mean, I don't think it's a, accident that we saw the moment that she realizes this is Tattletale and thinks this very like, what I read is just a very deep emotional, like, I'm sorry this happened to you.
I'm so sorry this happened to you. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's going to change their relationship, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And I think if it can have the power to change the relationship between Lisa and Victoria, it can change all of these relationships forever.
Yeah, I think so. All right, Scott, let's get into the discussion question part of the show.
All right.
So last week's question was, let's talk about Natalie's new CAPE laws. Is this the best possible law enforcement paradigm? And how would you design or improve upon it? And a lot of you just answered the first part of that question, so you're going to get a C right off the top, and then we're only going to deduct points from there.
Man, I love when we grade people.
Yeah. But go ahead, Scott.
All right. First up, we have Sarah Penguin, who makes several good points. For one, a big bounty never stopped the Slaughterhouse-9, and Matt's counterpoint here is because Cauldron didn't want them to, which, touche, Matt. Touche.
Sure.
You still can't go after capes aligned with Teacher or the Red Queen. There will still be concentrations of villains that can't outright be attacked. The impossible idea of utopia would be to get each new parahuman a therapist before their trauma leads them to a life of crime. The best feasible solution would be something like the old PRT, with PRT directorates and protectorate leaders working as equals. I like that. I mean, the idea of, like, obviously, and I think Sarah admitted this in her answer, that therapy is not going to solve every single problem. It's not going to make every single bad guy no longer a bad guy, but it certainly will help a large amount of people. And I think one of the things that this book has always championed as the idea of the positivity of therapy and help in that regard. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think that this is a really good answer. Full marks, Sarah Penguin.
yes.
Yeah, we're actually going to see this theme in a few different answers. The idea that like a bounty will only work on lower level villains, and that may be true. Yeah, we'll see. Other people have interesting twists on this, so let's see if we can get through this. So
Yeah.
Beat Nemesis very helpfully TLDRs their post by saying villains were already mostly cut off from the economy by dint of being villains. The bounty laws will mostly just turn up the lethality when they defend their possessions. So basically, they are finding a particular negative externality of this policy.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. I mean, I think the one result of taking away what people want the most is they're going to defend that thing more rigorously if they get it. So
yeah, right. It's I mean, I see there being knock-on effects. Like if you murder someone for their stuff, maybe now you're viewed as an outlaw, or like a worse level of outlaw, and you get a kill order. I don't know. But I think the general gist of this answer is probably fairly accurate.
Yeah.
Maybe the humans are like, yep, so be it.
Yeah, so Muns for College didn't have a lot of good words for Natalie and her legal system. They said one of the best weapons a motivated group can use to fuck with their political opponents is the authority to seize assets and property. It's been used as a means to put pressure on disenfranchised people since time immemorial, and now it's in place to be used against parahumans, villains, or otherwise. Basically, they look at the system as a very, very abusable system, which has handed the anti-parahumans a tool to fuck with all of the parahumans they don't like, which, yeah, I could see that. I could see how it could be abused in terrible ways.
Yeah, right. It's and it's a way of basically getting capes to do your dirty work to take out other capes, right?
Sure.
I definitely see the proneness to abuse.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the part that I'm most interested in is what's a better option though? That's what I was kind of hoping. So even if I kind of agree with you that this isn't great, what could we do that's better? What's better?
Yeah, there's some interesting takes later on.
Sure,
we'll get to those. Yeah, Daedalus Fallen says the problem is that this only works for low level villains, like maybe Hollow Point tier or lower villain groups. For the same reason, big companies are able to get away with the quote unquote expenses incurred by breaking laws, while small companies are not. Daedalus Fallen also thinks that there's no such thing as a best system, basically because there's no such thing as an objective best. Although I would say, if that also implies there's no better or worse, which implies that Natalie's system is the best.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't look at best as like best objectively,
cosmically.
I just like the best possible. Like, what is the best possible thing they could do?
Yeah. Right.
Given their situation, given everything that's going on, what is the absolute best possible legal system they could create? Is this it? And if it's not, what do you think? What do you think is?
Yeah.
The omnipotent. Why did I say it that way? The omnipotent. Sometimes your brain turns off. The omnipotent says it's the best possible paradigm for Cape Wild West shenanigans. They would empower non-capes as sheriffs to enforce bounties, mainly because it would be more fun. Hey, I like that answer.
Yeah, this is the fun option.
Yeah.
Anti-Chris says it's bad. People who are deemed non-compliant will view the system as turning against them, quote unquote, even if they aren't Taylor, and it only incentivizes worse behavior. This question made me think for a while. Or this answer made me think for a while, actually, because I'm like, couldn't you say all law enforcement efforts incentivize worse behavior in the sense that you're always incentivized to like run from the cops? Like if the cops are coming to arrest you, you're always incentivized to, like if you're a criminal, you're always incentivized to be a worse criminal. I'm not just saying Anti-Chris is wrong. I'm kind of being like, well, I do see how this has a unique ability to make you feel like everybody is against you. Like everybody is against you, not just the cops.
Yeah, I mean that's really funny because I think a lot of our legal systems harshest penalties are put in place specifically to dissuade people from committing those crimes. And you're basically saying that doesn't actually work, which I kind of think you're right. I mean, I don't think people don't murder people because of how many years they'll get in prison, right?
Yeah.
Like in general, I don't think like the number of years you'll get in prison is cognizant when you're committing the crime.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm like, if you kill a law enforcement officer, the penalty is you somehow don't make it back to the jail.
Yeah, the penalty is you're fucked. Yeah.
Yeah. But so yeah, I don't know. It was an answer that I almost dismissed as like, no, I disagree, and then I like thought about it a lot and was like, well, this is a tricky one.
That is interesting, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure I can get a place where I'm fully settled on it, because I'm inclined to agree with you, but I also like. The thing is that regardless, we need the laws in place, right?
Yeah. I'm coming down really firmly on the stance of it's complicated. So.
It's a really great stance.
Yeah.
Hobo Demon says that the legal system is reminiscent of that of Iceland, with bounty hunters collecting Wurgold. What's that?
I don't know. I mean, I think this is ancient Iceland, by the way. I'm not actually sure.
Like not modern day Iceland?
I actually have no idea. It would be totally awesome if modern day Iceland still worked this way.
Rather than relying on uncooperative defectors to turn up in court, it implies a shift back to a collectivized civilization towards libertarian confederalism. Hobo Demon wonders if this is part of somebody's plan, maybe Dynas, to sow humanity to the winds. They also throw in a dope stranger in a strange land reference.
Yeah, I like this post a lot. Very cool. Like just the idea is like we're actually regressing back to like the kind of legal system that would be used in a more spread out and kind of socially atomized. I mean, they use the word confederalism, basically like a confederation of many states rather than one super city. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of law enforcement you would need for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's to go back to our answer from Omnipotent. It's kind of a Wild West type of law enforcement thing where
exactly
everyone's too spread out, too decentralized to have any kind of standing legal authority that can actually enforce stuff. So you're relying on certain actors in bounty hunters and sheriffs, quote unquote. Yeah.
I mean, basically, heroes become bounty hunters under this framework. Sort of.
Yeah.
EXE JPEG Windows Media Video says society can't afford a more lenient way of dealing with parahumans. At this point, they need to struggle to be heard by the capes on their own side, and there may be no pragmatic, better paradigm at this point. So basically, their answer, they actually get full marks because their answer is no, there's no better answer. There's no better way to do this.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
I like it. Death of the Artist again points out that this policy promotes a bad status quo. Weak, small-time villains get repeatedly robbed. People like Lung, who aren't worth attacking, run around unimpeded. The pro side is the heroes support themselves more, quote-unquote, directly. Matt really likes their suggested modifications to this, though. Provide a large reward for villains that turn hero or new capes who go hero and submit themselves to existing hero organizations. This gives heroes more legal leeway to make this a more attractive option. Next, escalate the stakes. Issue kill orders more readily. Repeat murderers like Kaiser or Lung should qualify for a kill order. Imagine if we could just have the patrol block set up a sniper and blow away Kaiser from half a mile away. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. Third, arm the populace. If you literally can't disarm the criminal element, you have to arm the victims. That's scary to me. I don't know if I like that.
I mean, I'm going to give them an A+ for thinking about this problem outside the box.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's an interesting notion. Like if you can't have a powers free zone, right? The villains are always going to have their powers. So. Mm-hmm.
The idea of that idea doesn't exist. Yeah,
I think the idea of escalating the kill orders also reminds me of Wild West, right? Like, dead or alive, just shoot him and bring him in, and we'll sort it out.
Yeah. I wonder. Cool. I wonder if the central problem that they had, especially early, was this idea of them trying to stand up a government that looked very much like the old government in a land that was just inherently less civilized and uniform, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that the system was even working well back in the day. As you said last week, the only reason it was as successful as it was because it had this incredibly powerful person backing it and forcing it to go the way to survive for just as long as they needed it to.
Yeah. This idea of the large reward for people who either turn hero or start hero, I kind of think of this and I'm like, well, what if society just, I mean, parahumans are pretty rare. Mm-hmm. What if society just decided like, fuck it, we'll just pay them. We'll just pay you. If you're a parahuman, it's like you won the fucking lottery. You get a salary basically, and it's a pretty good one. And if you start being an asshole, we revoke your salary. So you really lose all your incentive for being a villain if like you're being super well taken care of already, right? Like, I don't know if they have the resources to actually do that. Like, that's probably the biggest problem with this idea is this is the post-apocalypse. So what the fuck are they going to do with the salary? But in principle,
I think that's a general. I think that's in line with a lot of what studies say about crime in general, right? Which is that most crime is a crime of lack of resources and of need, right?
Yeah.
So if you just give everyone everything they need, nobody's going to do any crime. Of course, that's not entirely true. There are going to be outliers that just do it for the sake of doing it. And the problem with capes is those outliers can be extremely more deadly and terrible than just a normal person who says, screw you, I'm going to live outside society just because I want to. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where the kill order comes in.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but right. I don't think that, I mean, like I think in an idealized world, yeah, that would absolutely solve the problem. I don't think so. Do not think so.
I mean, the kill order on Siberian, eventually worked, I guess.
Yeah. Like after many horrible deaths.
Yes. Right. Farm Fresh Hornets says this is probably the best we're going to get. Millions of people are literally on the run. So there needs to be passive measures that actually stand a chance. Something has to make being a villain seem less sexy and easy. Mm-hmm. And this seems like a candidate for that.
Yeah.
I like their concept of being passive rather than active because they don't have the energy to be active about this.
Yeah. I mean, and one of the things that I don't know if we directly talked about it last week, but one of the things that Natalie basically said is this might just be too little too late. Like we're evacuating, everyone's leaving. Like do we even have the authority to pass laws anymore?
Right.
Like who's going to listen to this when everyone's leaving? Like we might have just done this too late. Oops.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Lastly, but certainly not least, DataSnake69 is one of the few who directly addresses how the new policy creates a perverse incentive by turning criminals into a source of revenue. And it means that law is essentially optional for anyone who can afford to just pay the fines. Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like you'd have to put some guards into the system against that kind of exploitation.
I like how a lot of these answers looked at the system and said, okay, like on the surface, the way Natalie sold it, that seems reasonable, but you got to think about the ways in which people will abuse stuff because that's always going to happen. Right. In any system, there's going to be people that look at it and say, oh, here's how I can do this. And a lot of our answers are people specifically looking at it and saying, all right, here's how people are going to fuck with this. And I think that's really fascinating. So thank you all for doing that.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I almost feel like you could find perverse incentives in literally any conceivable criminal justice system.
Yeah, I think so.
Or policing system, like just because it's like, okay, you're paying some people to put other people in jail. Like that automatically, that's it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, but don't no for-profit prisons.
I mean, that's definitely.
Can we just not do that? I watched Orange is the New Black. I'm basically an expert of that now. Yeah.
I mean, I think our podcast has the sway that we can just say we're done with for-profit prisons now.
We've got Ward executive order. No more.
Yep.
No more. Everyone, all you for-profit prison companies, shut down right now. It is really a stupid idea. Can we just I don't want to get too political. The idea of making profit off of prisoners is the dumbest fucking idea I've ever heard of in my entire life.
Well, it just seems like one of those things that only ever happened because of corruption in the first place.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, you're welcome though. We solved it.
Mm-hmm. So that's the entire problem with the criminal justice system right there. There's no other problems. Oh my God.
All right. Discussion question for next week. using dreams in storytelling can be hit or miss. What is your favorite use of dreams in fiction, and why was it effective?
Yeah.
I really want to focus on why, because frankly, that's just why I'm interested in things in general. But I don't know. I know of a lot of books where there'll be a dream sequence, or movies actually, where there'll be a dream sequence, and I'm just like, that just was kind of chaos. Like, I get you're telling me something about the mental state of the character, but it didn't feel elegant. Didn't feel anything like the way dreams are being used in this story, obviously. So I thought I'd get a broader sampling of people, of storytellers using dreams.
Yeah, because I think there's going to be, I think you're right, there's going to be a lot of different ways in which dreams are depicted. Because I just think it's this space for almost infinite creativity.
Yeah.
Like you basically create a space in which the rules of any world no longer apply. And
right.
Yeah,
it almost suffers for a lack of constraints, right?
Sure.
Because constraints breed creativity.
Yeah.
I can think of a few where, well, anyway, I'll let you guys answer. And that's all we got for you this week on We've Got Ward. You guys are all part of this show, so feel free to provide us with advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's reading.
You can reach out to us via email at gotwormpod@gmail.com. And remember, guys, that's where we want you to send the mailbag questions for the upcoming mailbag. Please send those to gotwormpod@gmail.com. Or, of course, you can always reach out to us on Twitter at gotwormpod. That's where you'll see my weekly live reads of the latest couple chapters. My personal Twitter is ScottDaily85, where you'll find me ranting about It Chapter 2. And Matt's is at MoreDinamail, where you'll find Matt making fun of the iPhone.
That's right. If you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we strongly recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find We've Got Ward on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else in the world you can listen to podcasts.
And of course, you can find all the other shows we do over at our website, doofmedia.com. Every single show we produce each and every week will be right over there. And all you have to do is click that play button. What show you want to talk about this week, Matt?
First of all, I'm going to mention that the words for do the right thing were move, unused, abaft, and eraser.
Matt, what's an abaft?
Abaft means like to the aft or behind the ship, basically.
Abaft.
Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be nautical.
It's like doing sit-ups on the back of a ship.
Like you're abaft of the ship if you're behind the ship. You only have to use 3 of those words. You don't have to use abaft. I chose to use abaft. I took a risk.
Oh, look at you go, Matt.
Yeah. And then didn't Media MD cover The Boys recently?
They covered The Boys last week, yeah. Last week was their episode on The Boys. So if you've watched The Boys and want to listen to a couple of Australians talk about it, go check out that episode. We also, on our Patreon, I'm gonna brag about this because the Media MD guys also did a quick analysis of a Wildbow story about Pact. So it's a Patreon exclusive. So you're for patron and you haven't listened to that, go to patreon.com and check out their little 20-minute analysis of a short story Wildbow wrote for Do the Right Thing, which is very cool. I think the guys were very excited about that.
Yeah.
And of course, just listen to everything we do.
Yeah.
Just do it.
And I think I'm really excited to talk this week about M. Night Shyamalan's The Last Airbender.
A lot of people are excited about this. I'm scared. I haven't watched the movie yet. I'm going to do it after we record this episode, and I'm going to probably try to watch it a couple times, but I'm really nervous about this because I love my M. Night.
We're going to have a fun talk, I think.
Okay. I'm worried that I'm just gonna blindly defend my boy.
That's, you know what? I'm fine. I'm literally fine with any reaction.
All right.
Well, anyway, if you like any of those 43 shows and you want to support them, consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. You can donate $1 a month or whatever else you can afford, of course. Supporting us on Patreon gives you a lot of cool bonuses like the ability to vote in the upcoming fan art contest, hangout sessions with pretty much all of the Doof crew that we did a fun online gaming thing last month. We're going to do a different thing this month, but it's still going to be fun. And access to live streams of our recording sessions, including this one. And of course, the excellent Discord chat, which is just a great place to hang out.
Yeah, and we are a mere 8 patrons away from hitting our next goal, which is our Dark Tower series, where we will do the We've Got Worm /word treatment to Stephen King's magnum opus, some of my favorite books of all time. I have been looking forward to doing this since we set this goal, secretly wondering if we would ever get there, and we are almost there, and I'm so excited. So you could be the patron that breaks the tower's back.
That's right. Eight people.
8 people. Any level. Doesn't matter what level you're donating at. It's just 8 more people to go.
Yep. So as always, make sure you go over to Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow and donate to him as well while you're over there. This is his world, and we're just playing in it. For our part, special thanks this week to new patrons, Bidoofs at the $1 level, Michaela K, Sohaib M, Eric M, MC Minty Spice, Brandon P, Ashley B, and Nick L, Doof Dancers at the $5 level, Seshi, Ty K, and Brandon F, and a new Doof Troop member at the $10 level, Michael H. Wow, that's a lot of names.
Yeah,
we really appreciate you guys.
That's in 1 week. Thank you so much.
Yeah, wow. Just really appreciate it. And you've got us so close to this Dark Tower thing. I'm freaking out.
Yeah, I'm freaking out because we've got a lot of work to do to get that show ready. But I'm so excited. I'm so excited about all this. I'm so excited about where this book is going. I'm so excited about where Doof is going. And I'm so excited that you guys appreciate us enough to help us out. We really do appreciate it. You guys make this whole thing possible, and we love you all. Thank you. And of course, if you cannot afford to donate, we still love you. We still love you just as much. Don't tell the other guys. You can instead help us out by heading on over to Apple Podcast or Stitcher and leaving us a rating and review. Each one of those counts and helps people find our show. It helps with algorithms, logarithms, whatever you want to say. It helps with all that stuff. So please do it. No new review to read this week, but hopefully there will be one next week because we love reading those, even if they're mean. Don't do that, but... Yeah,
please don't. But there's probably some out there caught in that system of tubes that is the internet.
Indeed.
That's all we got for you this week on We've Got Ward. Next week, From Within continues.
I can't wait. They're going to fight the hand man. Grasping hands. What's his name? I can't remember his name.